call tonight's City Council meeting of Lake Forest, September 3rd, 2013, to order. I'd like the record to reflect we're all here present. Invocation will be led by Ms. Mayor Pro Tem Kathy McCullough.
Father, in your precious name, I thank you and I glorify you that we are able to come together. I ask that you help each and every one of us to make the decisions that is guided by the God of our choice. I thank you that you allowed the people to come out and support us and to be actively involved in their city. And for all the staff, Father, I thank you. And I'd like for us to have a moment of silence for the firefighters that are injured and the people that have lost their homes, and help us to stay on track and keep an orderly meeting tonight. In your precious Son's name, amen. Could we please have a moment of silence? Thank you.
Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilman Adam Nick.
Will you please rise? Begin. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Brings us to presentations.
We have no item scheduled for presentation.
That brings us to the council on special meeting for the salmon color. We don't have salmon color.
Oh.
Salmon blue.
It's blue for the council. It's salmon for the public. I apologize for that.
Public, it will be salmon for you all out there and powder blue for us. So this is Assessor Agency of the Redevelopment Agency of Lake Forest. This brings us to the public session. At this time, the successor agency will convene to consider public matters. Those wishing to address the agencies must submit a complete a request to speak form to the agency secretary prior to the agency action. That will be Deborah Rose at the end. Public comments at this time. Members of the public may address the successor agency regarding any item within the subject matter of the successor agency. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless otherwise authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and will be overlaw time limit of 30 minutes for the public portion of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the successor agency on any matter, whether or not it appears on the agenda, is requested to complete a request to speak form available at the door at the side. The completed form can be then submitted to the public agency secretary, Deborah, and prior to the individual being heard by the successor agency. Whensoever possible, lengthy testimony should be presented to the successor agency in writing. 8 copies and only pertinent points presented orally. Additional, a request to register with the written comments form is available at the agenda public review counter. Consent calendar. Are there any public comments?
We've had no successor agency requests.
This time will bring us to the consent calendar. Items 1 through 4. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be acted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the successor agency, the public, or staff requests specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Madam Clerk, has there been any requests?
We've had no requests.
Council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item 5, adoption of recognized obligations payment schedule for the period January 2014 to June 2014, submitted by the Deputy Executive Director.
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, I'd like to have Mr. Bowen provide you just a brief update on this item.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board.
The Lake Forest Redevelopment Agency was dissolved effective February 1st of 2012, sadly. Since that time, like every redevelopment agency in the state of California, we have been in the unwinding process, essentially dissolving ourselves. We've been busy. We've adopted multiple ROPSs, one of which is on your agenda this evening. Those are reporting documents that substantiate the agency's cost in the unwinding process. We have completed due diligence reviews for both our housing fund and our non-housing fund, and we were pleased to report, as we noted in the staff report for a companion item on this agenda, that we have actually received from the state our finding of completion, which is a notable accomplishment because it entitles the former redevelopment agency to recoup monies that we believe we're legally entitled to. The item on your agenda this evening is what we call ROPS 14-B, and it's a prospective document that looks forward to or projects our expenditures in the period beginning January 2014 through June of 2014. It's a prelude to an item, along with the other agenda items, that will be presented to the Oversight Board at their meeting on September the 17th. And subject to your approval this evening and approval from the Oversight Board, we will forward the documents on to the State Controller and the State Department of Finance. So in short, we're certainly unwinding in the unwinding process, and you'll notice we have had some periods where we've kind of been a little dormant. That's because we tend now, under the law, to be operating on 6-month increments. So that's what these items are pertaining to, the 6 months beginning, as I mentioned, January to June 2014. So we have been and still remain in full compliance with AB 1484, which is the state legislation that governs the unwinding process. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, we're happy to try to answer them.
Also,
Anything from the public?
I second that.
All in favor?
We've had no requests to speak.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. That brings us back to the Lake Forest City Council. So we're going back to the green agenda, and at this time we'll take public comments. At this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any items within the subject matter of the City Council. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and an overall time limit of 30 minutes for public comment portion of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on the agenda, is requested to complete a request to speak form available at the door and complete the form and submit it to the City Clerk prior to the individual being heard by the City Council. Madam Clerk, have we had any requests?
Marcia Rudolph, followed by Elizabeth Smith.
Good evening. Two quick items on my little list. Item number one on my little list is a suggestion that I've had over the years that we've been a city several times, and it never seems to make it. So I'm going to bring it up again, and it's up to the council as to whether they want to do it or not. At the last meeting, we had a gentleman here who wanted to have an establishment that sold liquor. Turned out that there's a problem with where he wanted to sell it because we have multiple outlets for the sale of liquor in that area. What I have been hoping we could do over the years would be to have in the planning department somewhere a map, a wall map of the city, and either push pins or little red dots or something that would indicate where those outlets are that sell liquor, and also have it split up to in the various sections of the city that are considered areas that work together. If we had such a thing up like that, when a proponent came in and they wanted to do something like that, like sell liquor in an establishment, it would be easily or readily available to them information that would say, oops, this particular code where you want to be is already too full, find another piece of land to purchase and build your proposal on. That was number one thing. The second thing, I'd like to express my apology to the council and to Mr. Nick for interrupting his statements at the last meeting. It is very atypical of me, and I do express my apology, and it's not going to happen again. Anyway, take care.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Smith, followed by Jim Gardner.
Good evening, Mayor, City Councilman, City Councilwoman. My name's Elizabeth Smith. I live in Foothill Ranch. I attended my first general session of the City Council on August the 20th. I came that day because I knew an important issue was going to be on the agenda, and that was the Brookfield issue, the condos in a commercial property, the auto center. What I was not prepared for was the abominable and degrading way some council members spoke to others and of others council members. I was not prepared to watch the mayor sit idly by when another councilman was speaking and a third was being more than rude with his comments and his interruptions. I feel like the city council room is not a place for this vitriolic exchange. Carry on in your closed session if that's what you want to do, in the newspaper, whatever, but not in the city council room, and not before the members of the community who came to listen to cogent arguments and not diatribes. I was shocked to learn that one of our council members has been suing the city and, having lost in court, is continuing his suit in a higher court, costing the city tens of thousands of dollars. I was appalled to hear a council member declare, without having the floor, he hated another council member. Those of us who were here, it's not what we were here for. What we were here for was to be listened to and respected, but we weren't. We were deemed not to be enough people to matter, the agenda item about the Brookfield property. We were not important. You did not listen to us. You did not listen to your planning commission or two of your council members. You did not listen to reason. Who did you listen to? You listened to the suits that were sitting over here to my right, your left, in the front row. Thank you.
Jim Gardner.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. My name is Jim Gardner. I'm from Lake Forest. Let me apologize for appearing in a shirt such as I am. It's just so hot. I couldn't bear the thought of wearing a jacket. And let me say, before I start, this is going to be very uncomfortable for me, and I'm sorry if it's uncomfortable for some of the other people and who I like. That being said, last time I said that at the very least two of you, in my opinion, Mayor Voights and Councilman Robinson, violated the city's code of ethics by the unquestionable appearance of impropriety, and I read you the code. As a result of your actions, I contacted the city clerk to get details about how to file complaints, etc. Being the helpful, informative person she is, actually her whole staff, she does a terrific job. Catherine always wants me to do positive stuff, and thank you very much for the excellent job you did. She did research. She reported back to me that there was no procedure for investigations of violations or for censure. No procedure indeed. If ever a city needed a procedure, with the possible exception of Bell, you two, Mayor Voights, Councilman Robinson, both of whom I like personally, intentionally or unintentionally, have made Lake Forest the city that needs to examine procedures for dealing with the misbehavior of officials or the perceived misbehavior of officials. And as everyone knows, we're not merely talking about the campaign contributions and the developer money, and I believe it's more than mere chance that we're also talking about appointing planning commissioners tonight, and more about that later. I apologize for that in advance. And again, I tell you how difficult this is for me personally. I call on Mayor Pro Tem McCullough, Councilman Herzberg, Councilman Nick, to do the right thing. You must act in defense of the good, but now severely tarnished name of our city. Major stories appear all the time, in the Register, in the Patch, and the Voice of Orange County, and elsewhere, chronicling the questionable behavior of our mayor and councilmen. We must stop the bleeding. Only your action can prevent the city from falling into a morass that will stigmatize the city for years to come. You must do something about enforcing the ethical code of the city. And I apologize for what must be the 10th time for any personal harm that either of you may feel, and I hope you understand that I'm doing what I think is in the best interests of the city. Thank you very much.
We've had no further requests.
In that case, we'll bring it to the consent calendar, warrant registry. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be acted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, staff request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Madam Clerk, do we have any requests from the public?
No, Your Honor.
Council?
I do. Page 18, the Pittsford Park warrant. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Is it okay for me to go? You didn't tell me to go, and neither did the clerk.
No.
I pulled number 18.
Yeah, she said that. We moved the balance.
No.
The motion was to move the balance.
But I was waiting for permission to speak.
Right. Item number, okay.
Okay. It's item number 1, but number... but
Page
the-
18.
Page 18. I pulled the Pittsford Park, the warrant on the Pittsford Park because I don't know how many people have went and walked the park, but myself and Loretta Herron from the Parks and Rec, we've walked it. And they supposedly had been putting in some sod. I've gotten several different reasons that they put the sod in, and then we had the concert, then they went back, then they had to try to re-seam it and re-gut it, and I always let staff know when I'm going to pull something there, especially if it's a complaint. In the meantime, they call themselves fixing it. Now, we paid for the sod for it to be put down the first time. And then when we had the concert, there was big seams. Anybody that's ever had sod put in your front yards or your backyard or what, you know it should be seamless. Then it was seamed. When we got to the concert, it had turned to hay. And it still was big seams, where when you try to walk, you can trip. Then this last concert, I didn't make it to the concert before that, but the very last concert we had, it still isn't fixed, and they went back out. And now they have, on my warrant list, I have irrigation repair. So I got back to staff. I always give them an opportunity to get to me before I get on the dais, but I let them know what I'm going to complain about. Now it seems that if any of you have been there, please walk that part. And walk it carefully, because its holes is like, it looked like the sod hunks broke off, and they didn't put it back on in. They put a piece too small for the hole, and so it's like this. If a child is walking, the little ones, when they run through the grass, they're going to fall. If a person that has a cane or a wheelchair or something like that, they better creep real slow, because there's bumps and lumps like squares and hunks of popcorn like this. Now, my problem is with this is that, number one, I don't want these people doing anything at our sports park. I feel they're incompetent, and that's my personal opinion, and that's what the people sit me here for me to check out things and give you my opinion. Now, when I checked on it this last time, I've complained about this 2 or 3 times. Staff can tell you how many times I've complained to any of them that will give me an ear. My problem is now I'm told in order to fix it, it's got to be graded. I feel like this. Cities, yes, they claim we have deep pockets, but we have to stretch this money out for the lifetime of the city. And I feel if these people did not tell us from the beginning when they first looked at it and we said we want to do some side, they should have told us to get those potholes out, those grass holes and things, we need to grade it. And then we need to apply the sod properly where you don't have big gaps and lines in there where you can trip and fall. And then when you went back and you spent time and money to supposedly going to close up the seams, and went out there and they're not closed, it's still hunks and bumps and seams. Now you say it needs to be graded. These are the types of contracts that for me, we need to look at carefully. I am not a happy camper, and Loretta Herron, we walked it at the last concert. She isn't either. She's on Parks and Rec. I'm not, I understand that we would have to give some more money, be able to give some more money for the grading before they can really get it fixed. Now, someone, and I don't remember which one of you it is, and I don't want you to get beat up on, so I'm not going to say it anyway. Someone says, well, we're going to have the big sports park anyway, so the people in that community, all of our neighborhood parks should be up to the best that they can be. So the people in that community, when their kids go out there and play and fall and over the lumps and bumps, or someone like myself with a cane or someone with a wheelchair, because we're going to have the big park, we should not get it fixed correctly? I have a problem with that. So I'm asking the council that we need to look at it before we give these people any more money, and that's why I pulled it, and we need to look at what we're going to do to get it fixed, because it's not fixed. And this is the second or third round, and it is not fixed. And I already spoke to staff that's in charge of it, and city manager, if you want to say something or give your staff the right to say something to refute what I'm saying. I was just out there, and it's still all unlevel and stuff. Why are we paying these people to do something that they're not doing? And I don't want them working on any more of our parks. I know I need 2 other people up here, but I don't believe that the other, well, I know the mayor he was out there, we were complaining together, and our planning commissioners, but I don't know if the other 3 of y'all have been there, but I told staff, I'll walk it and show you every one of them. I walked the whole park, and I think I got a couple of hours so free tomorrow. I'll put on my tennies and we will walk it, because it is a mess. So when the park come, you're just going to leave that mess there for the people in that neighborhood? I wouldn't want you to do that in my neighborhood. So I try and do the things in this city that I would want if that's where I lived. So for any of you that's been out there, I see y'all nodding your head. You had walked it and tripped and almost fell and stuff. We have got to make a decision on this. And I'd like for the city councils that have not been out there recently to go and take a look at it, and any of the other parks and recs. And like I said, Tom Willer and we already have a pending date to go walk it, and I think maybe we need to get the city manager to go walk it with us too. A little exercise don't hurt. The city can survive for that little, take us about half an hour. I can do it tomorrow morning about 5 o'clock. I see the heads. No. Okay. Just leave you out of it. But no, seriously, I'm ready to go whenever you want to go. I'm quite sure the mayor, he want to go too, because it's a problem. So I know we have to pay our bills. I don't, if we're going to pay it, but I'm not willing to agree to pay these people some more money to grade, because they should have told us up front it needs to be graded to get it fixed like we wanted it fixed. And I'm not willing to leave that park in that shape once the sports park is built. So let's make some decisions.
I want to concur with Mayor Pro Tem, the fact that that park, we had discussed on that park, is actually, it is a beautiful big park, enough big playing surface so we could have soccer events or playing soccer out there. And it is hard to roll on. And someone's speaking from a wheelchair, and I couldn't imagine someone walking, an elderly person or someone walking with a cane, actually maneuvering that park. And so it's something that I thought was kind of rushed through when we did it a week before we had our concert. It has come back to life, but the grading on it is still subpar. Is there anything that we can do on that and to address that?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'll let Tom Wheeler speak to the conditions at the park, but I would let you know, Mayor Pro Tem Michael, I've walked it several times since this issue's come up. So I know what the conditions are out there. But I guess from my perspective, I would offer this. We have a contract with this company that does all of our park maintenance. So if we are going to want to do something about that agreement, I think that takes a lot bigger action and has contractual implications for the city that we'd want to seriously consider if that's what we intend to be doing in that respect. But as it relates more particularly to the condition there and what it might take to rehabilitate that, just offhand, in terms of grading, the cost and the magnitude of that may trigger that to move into a capital improvement project. And then it'd be a function of when you'd be doing that versus whether you would do it or not. So with that, I just keep in mind that we have a contract with this company that does all of our parks. So with that, I would keep that in mind, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Wheeler to talk about the conditions of this park.
I'll wait. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the phone call earlier. What I'd like to do first is just walk with whoever would like to go out there, certainly you. I want to define the problem.
I'm in on that, too.
Very good. Let's define the problem and see what the true issue is. Is it the grass? Is it the underlying soil? What is it? And then we'll come up with a solution. And then depending on the magnitude of that solution, we'll bring it back, whether it's a capital project through the normal capital project budget process. If it's something because the grass didn't take or something like that, we have remedies through the contract to take on to that. So I'd like to make sure we're all seeing the same thing and make sure we're all in agreement, and then we'll define what we need to do to make it better.
On that, could you, I know we've talked about this and how upset I was on this project
Absolutely.
too, but you did explain to me that this was a routine tearing up of the grass because of the different patches that we did have there. Why don't you give us a minute and explain that?
Well, this wasn't an improvement with regards to the ground or the soil or anything like that. Routinely every summer, we shut down most of our active parks, some of our other parks, and replace them with new sod, new grass, and we also just give them a time to rest. So each summer we'll get the complaints, but we set up chain link fence to fence off the active fields, and that's part of just letting the fields rest, letting them recuperate from the season. And so we have, and that's one of the reasons why we have great parks. And so in this park in particular, been trying since I've got here, so a little over a year, to bring back some of the grass, and it's gotten well used over the years. We went ahead and took out a lot of the grass and replaced it with all new sod. Contractor did a poor job of that particular placement. The sod, he didn't get it all laid down the first day. Some of it sat out for that second day. Got a little brown. Very poor job. That coupled with the timing, which was the week before the first concert. So that happened. It was very unfortunate. It's come back now. The grass is better than what it was. Still, the rocky or the bumps and stuff, and that's what we need to talk about. So, is it a grass issue, which is what we replaced and what we do routinely, that our inspectors have so much money in their budget to control, and we do that? Or do we have to get down to the sub-base? Do we have to regrade it and smooth it out and do some more action? That's going to take more action to do, and so I want to make sure that we understand that we can price up some things and bring that back to council.
As a former contractor, I know that they have the rights to fix that first. Mm-hmm. But can I just throw out maybe make a motion? This might be a motion item, but the fact is maybe have them come out and look at and get since they did a poor job on the grass laying, that maybe they'll eat the cost of putting the grass in the next time, but in that process, we'll pay for the grading, have it regraded at the beginning of next summer. So
Mayor, could I go ahead? You finish with that. I was just going to suggest that before us is just one element of this maintenance contract,
okay.
And what I'd suggest is that you pursue the thought process that you're going on, which is to visit and consult with Mr. Wheeler. And then if the council has a consensus to bring back a reevaluation of the maintenance or a capital investment, you could do that separately with agendized items.
Then we'll go out and do an informal walk on the park.
I'm very comfortable with doing the walk, and I also would like to see that contract because I'd like to see the responsibility. I feel that they did not meet their contract. I feel they violated it, because I know we would not have made a contract with the patches and stuff, and I will walk and point out every issue. So bring a pen and paper, or bring a camera, because I do not believe first, second, or third round that they have done sufficient by that contract. And I would like to see us let them know, in this city, you do not do that. If you can't bring it and do a good job, don't come. Go to some other city that will take that slot. But this is monies that we need to be responsible for. And they did not do a responsible job. I feel they have breached their contract with us. And when I go over, and I want to go real quick so you have time to send them over there to try to patch up what I want to show you. So I'm going to loose me up some time tomorrow or the next day, because I want you to see, and this is my second, third round on this. I don't feel there's any development, but as much that a city has to pay. I have a gardener. I just fired one gardener. I just don't take that stuff. And I can't see when a city, as much work and monies they get out of us for doing our work, I feel we should have the best. And it's not even an amateur job. So I feel we walk it. When we walk it, you list all the stuff. Then you can, we'll give you our opinion, of course, as we go along. Then you can take it back to Bob, and he can decide if he needs to put it on the agenda. But somebody's going to need to feed me something real quick, because this has really got my diaphragm. And the people in that community is what's going to be done with it after that. I think the people in that community should make that decision, and then they can bring it to us and we can consider it, not us. Thank you.
Would you consider a motion now?
He says we don't need.
You can take the field trip with Mr. Wheeler.
Field trip.
If there's a staff-initiated item, that'd be fine.
Move the item.
Move the item.
The warrant that's left.
It's a warrant. It's still on there. We have to
Okay.
choose to move it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I didn't hear a second, but thank you.
At this time, it would take you to the consent calendar. Items 2 through 10. All matters under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate action of these items unless a member of the City Council, the public, or staff requests specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Madam Clerk, do we have any items to be removed from the public?
Agenda items 4 and 5.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
As well, even though this does not appear on the consent calendar, I did want to suggest to the City Council on item 12, which is a discussion matter, so if anybody in the audience was waiting for that item, staff's recommendation would be on item number 12, which is consideration of a policy prohibiting the use of electronic devices. That item, staff needs to do some additional research on that. We would request that the council continue it to October.
I move to defer the item to a later time, as determined by the city manager.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, City Manager. Okay.
Move to
Did we have,
Did we do that?
Yep. No, we don't have a
We-
second. You can make a motion.
I move to remove the remaining of the consent calendar.
All in favor?
It's been second. Aye.
agenda item 4, adoption of ordinance number 255, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lake Forest approving the adoption of a development agreement between the City of Lake Forest and Foothill Village LLC, submitted by City Clerk and removed from the consent calendar by a member of the public. Jim Gardner.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. My name is Jim Gardner. I live in Lake Forest. Last time I spoke on the issue of Brookfield, I listed several ways in which I believe the city was acting illegally. I'm not a lawyer, but I was briefed for several hours by an expert in CEQA law. After I spoke, you had your staff make brief presentations in which they attempted to refute my comments. Some of their statements were false. For example, they claimed Terry Anderson was acting as a commissioner when he gave his opinion. He was not. He was acting as a former commissioner out of office, and as such, he was an expert opinion, an expert witness, as I said. Your staff said that the unpublished traffic research done as part of the Brookfield traffic study showed that a 2% threshold had not been achieved, and therefore there was no legal impact. As I understand it, the fact that this research alluded to was not public was improper. Moreover, my understanding from the hours I spent with the lawyer is that in several legal decisions here in Orange County, the 2% rule you used was found to be inadequate. If I had $2,000 to spend, my attorney would be here now explaining this better than I can, but I wanted to take this opportunity to respond. Besides, I don't understand how you still rely on the legal opinions coming from BBK and O. You didn't know they'd changed their name. Those stands for OOPS. First they say you can pass an ordinance against day laborers, then oops, you can't. Then they say you can pass an ordinance against sex offenders in our park, and then they say, oops, you can't. Mr. Nick, how can you say I rely on our city attorney? Aren't you in a lawsuit with the city? If the city's attorney's advice is so good, why are you suing the city? If his advice isn't good, why are you listening to him in this case? Now forget everything I've said up till now. I'm not a lawyer. I could make a mistake. I probably am making mistakes. And maybe the expert secret attorney with whom I've been speaking is merely wanting to engage me as a client and separate me from my money. But he is a colleague of yours. He's an attorney. He's got plenty of experience in the city, and he's telling you these procedures are illegal. I urge you to stop. I urge you before going forward to get a second opinion, not to risk a lawsuit, and I urge you to listen to the opinions of your own colleague in this matter. Thank you very much.
We've had no further requests on item 4.
Bring it back to council.
Hey, we're closing the public comment portion on this. So we're just
Item 4, yeah.
Okay.
And I'd like to, before we get going on item 4 and 5, for council and for you all in the audience, last meeting we had a 3-hour discussion on this. I'd like to bring it back to the council and say, is there a time that we'd like to close on this? 10 minutes? All right.
I mean, obviously, I voted against the development agreement. This is the second reading of the development agreement, and as was mentioned, we did discuss things at length, and yet one of the issues of this whole thing is that you had 1,500 pages to go through in a short amount of time, and it wasn't fully vetted, so you continue to find new things. And I would like to, now, instead of going through all the things we have gone through, point out something that was not discussed. And so I direct the council's attention to page 46 of our agenda, and it's section 6, and this goes to this concept of, it's entitled Approval of Related Entitlements. And in here there are several misstatements of fact and law that lead to the inability for this to be approved because it is entirely inaccurate. First off, the city attorney at least acknowledges the fact that our codes do state that the planning commission is the approving authority. Then what this section goes into is a supposed statement of why that was not followed this time around. And in previous discussions, I've already talked about the problem of retroactivity of this, because even in section 4 it indicates that this development agreement was not even in force until the other items were approved, which occurred after the planning commission hearing. But the first supposed statement of, for reasons of allowing this process, which I believe is illegal to go forward, is that he says, quote, pursuant to authorization under section 66452 through 66452.2 of the government code, that this allows us to move forward with the city council being the approving authority on the tentative tract maps and the site development plan. So I read the 3 code sections. It's pretty much English. These code sections have absolutely nothing to do with who has authority to do anything. These code sections are entitled, number one, tentative maps, so don't even address site development permits, number one. But number two, it's an entirely procedural question that just discusses the timeline in which tentative maps, not site development plans, need to be put on the agenda. There is nothing in these three sections that talks about who has the authority to do what. It merely indicates the timing that the city clerk has to follow to put these things on the agenda. That's it and nothing else. So, Mr. Smith, I'm totally puzzled as to how you can cite these three code sections as authority for the concept that the City Council is the approving body. Do you have any explanation?
Mayor and Council, if I could, and I'm going a little bit on the fly here because this is the first time I've heard these arguments, but those code sections we've referred to before, Councilmember Herzog is right. They don't speak to site development permits. Those are actually a creature of the Lake Forest Municipal Code. The only state law that might control this is what's referenced there, and it has to do with the Subdivision Map Act. And that section gives the City Council the authority about whether to decide maps and approve maps itself or to delegate that authority to the Planning Commission. And our position, and I think the Council's position, is that because the Council can delegate that authority pursuant to these laws, the state law allows the Council to alter those procedures and to have the Council hear and consider and approve all of these entitlements, not just the map as prescribed by state law, but also the SDP as it sees fit. So the general rule here is that a specific enactment controls a general one, and this specific ordinance controls and sets the process for consideration of these entitlements. And our position, and I've appreciated the chance to think about this a lot, and to consult with it a lot with my colleagues and to research it a lot. But our position is that the Council has the authority with this specific ordinance to reserve for itself final approval over all the entitlements that are related to this application.
And we'll get to that, Councilman, but my specific question is you did not cite the Subdivision Map Act. You cited sections 66452 through 66452.2. It's in print here. The three sections only talk about timing. It's even entitled Procedure. Chapter 3, Article 2, Procedure. That's it. And all it talks about is that these things have to be set within 50 days. These three code sections do not, in any way, shape, or form, provide any authority or remove any authority from anybody. So again, instead of a generalized discussion, how can you ask the Council to approve something that says that these sections authorize it when it does not?
Mayor and Council, these are the only provisions of state law that speak to this issue. We've cited them there. The general rule is that the Council can decide for itself, without regard to these citations, who gets to approve tract maps, who gets to approve site development permits. And this enactment contains a specific procedure that's before the Council today. The citations are the only authority that speak even remotely to it. The most important thing is Section 9.184 of the Municipal Code, which this alters.
Well, again,
so we don't, Mayor, I didn't mean to cut Mr. Herzog off, but this is about the fourth time we've had this conversation at least, and I'm happy to pursue it further if the Council desires. But I just want to say as a bottom line that we've studied this idea and this proposal very thoroughly, and I'm comfortable that it's within the Council's authority to set this process up as it's done.
Well, Mr. Again, you have now actually lied. We have not discussed these three code sections. In fact, in the memo that I asked you to provide, and you did in July, about your legal analysis of why we can do it, doesn't even mention these three code sections. They only appear in the ordinance for the development agreement. These have never been discussed, and you know it. So again, sir, where is, with these things that they talk about, it has to be set within 50 days. talks about what, the clerk has to do if there's no advisory agency. These, you can read it, it's English. They do not say what you indicate in Section 6, that somehow this says that they authorize, there's nothing in here about authorization of the City Council to be the approving authority. And I think, as you've indicated initially, the ordinance sets out the process, and the ordinance, which I agree does set out the process and is enforced, says it's the Planning Commission. So again, I'm asking you, is there anything in this English language that indicates at all that the government code says that the City Council is the approving authority?
Mayor and Council, the only provisions of state law that remotely might control these issues are sections 66452 through 66452.2, which cross-reference other provisions of the government code relating to this process and give the council the ability to delegate responsibility or not. The ordinance before you keeps that responsibility at the City Council. It's pretty clear and pretty emphatic that Section 9.184 and Chapter 7.05 of the Muni Code provide otherwise. This ordinance changes that for purposes of this development agreement.
Right, and we've talked about the retroactivity issue, but in your comment it says that pursuant to authorization under these three code sections. Now, again, in my opinion, you have not answered the question, but I'll move on because this one's even more obvious, and we can read it again. Because the second part of this is supposedly that you're asking the City Council to claim as correct, is that you specifically reference Section 8.5 of the Development Agreement. The City Council shall be the approving body for the tentative map and site development permit for the project addressed by the Development Agreement. Well, let's go to Section 8.5, which is on page 67 of the agenda, and I'll read it. Section 8.5, first tentative map consideration. Quote, notwithstanding any contrary provision of the land use regulations or this agreement, the first tentative map shall include the entire property and must be approved by City Council. In addition to the contents required by the land use regulations, an application for the first tentative map approval shall also include the first tentative map submittal package, period. That's it. Nowhere, as you could hear, is site development permit mentioned. So, yet, in the ordinance, under Section 6, you're claiming and wrote that Section 8.5 indicates the City Council shall be the approving body of the tentative map and site development permit. It does not. So, again, when the clear language of 8.5 does not even mention a site development permit, how can you ask this council to approve an ordinance that says that Section 8.5 does?
If you'd like me to review that, I think that section of the ordinance speaks for itself, and when you read it in context, it gives independently the council the authority to approve the SDP. But when read in connection with Section 8.5, Section 8.5 refers to the first tentative map approval and says that it would include the first tentative map submittal package. The first tentative map submittal package is defined to include the SDP. And so when we've done this before with this section for several years now, the council, I think, has understood clearly that Section 8.5's referral to the first tentative map submittal package includes its consideration and approval of the SDP. So in short, I think that section of the ordinance stands by itself without the reference to 8.5. But Section 8.5, in referring to approval of the tentative map, includes approval of the first tentative map submittal package, which includes the site development permit.
City Attorney, so you're saying that the STP has been improved when the first tentative maps went through?
It's part of that first tentative map submittal package.
Okay,
so that's how we've read that.
Do we as a city have precedence on accepting it this way?
This would be at least the third time that we've done it this way.
And I'll also clarify that in those precedents, the development agreement was approved separately and first. And so there was a clear process matter where the code was not in effect at the time the Planning Commission went through the tentative tract maps and site development plan. This is the only occasion where there's been this attempt to ignore the code and then retroactively somehow say that, we can ignore the codes, like apparently they do in Washington and Sacramento now, and then all of a sudden later on say, well, no, we'll approve something that means you can go back. Process is important. Honesty with the public is important. And credibility of this city and this city council is important. And what has gone on here defies credibility because this is entirely retroactive, and you continue, even when asked for legal opinions, apparently don't give thorough ones and come up with things later on. I respectfully submit that there is nothing in Section 66452 through 66452.2 that provides any authorization. The English language is very clear, and the same thing is true with Section 8.5 of the development agreement. Site development permits are not mentioned. This council should not approve something that is inaccurate and gives a false statement to the public. This is a legal document that will be recorded.
Mayor Voigt, if I may.
I think
You go ahead.
Councilman Robinson.
City Attorney, Mr. Smith, do you feel comfortable that we can move forward?
Yeah, we've thought about this. Again, I've been grateful for the chance to think about it and reason through it a lot, but we think that the process that is prescribed by council and adopted here is sound.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, Councilman Robinson beat me to it. I just wanted to confer one more time with the city attorney that we are in the clear. He confirmed again what he had quite clearly. He had indicated the same last session or the session before that. In which case, I would like to ask you, Mayor Voigt, to move this forward, please.
I actually have, do we have a second on that? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask the city attorney about the challenge of it, the potential litigation of the challenge. How would that hold up?
Well, Mayor and Council, I don't want to ever handicap a legal challenge publicly, but let me say that there are two issues here that we've thought about pretty thoroughly, very thoroughly, and that I think underpin this process that was set by the council and that now has been used previously. The first is what I've referred to, that the city council can delegate decision-making to its planning commission, and I think by the same reasoning can reserve for itself that decision-making. The second theory is that the city council has the ability to appeal planning commission hearings, decisions, and hear them de novo. And so it makes sense to me that if the council chose to collapse that and to, so to speak, pre-appeal a planning commission decision, it has the statutory and legal authority to do that. So those are, I think, the third issue is whether there is prejudice by not having this item go to the commission, which has already considered and recommended approval of it. And so there's this question about construing your laws to do things that don't make sense. And of course, if the council thought that it was a good idea for this to go to the commission a second time, that could happen. But those are kind of the three issues. I think that they provide a sound basis for the council's consideration, and we've talked about it at length. I appreciate the other theories and legal questions that have been raised, and I think that leaves for us a sound decision that would be unlikely to be upended by a court. Should also, tell you, Mayor, that we've consulted very thoroughly with very respected law firms that are counsel for applicants in these cases. Of course, they have stakes in the decision, but I don't think that they would want to recommend anything reckless either. And both firms, after much consultation and much analysis internally, have concurred in this approach and think that it's a sound and defensible position.
On this item, this is the True Mark project, did the Planning Commission recommend approval for this, correct?
Yeah, that's right, Mayor.
And they did a site visit to the location?
I don't remember if their consideration included a formal site visit, Ms. Ackerman. No, they saw the same simulations and presentation that you saw.
But this one was approved and recommended by the Planning Commission?
That's right, Mayor.
Well, and I call a vote then.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
No?
Agenda Item 5, Adoption of Ordinance 256, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lake Forest, California, approving zone change 1-12-2376, amending the zoning for 70 Auto Center Drive from Foothill Ranch Plan Community Commercial to Foothill Ranch Plan Community Residential, submitted by the City Clerk and removed from the consent calendar by members of the public. Mary Axelrod.
Mary Axelrod, resident of Lake Forest. As I stood out in the hot sun this weekend, collecting signatures for a petition to take back the vote from three of you, White, Scott, and Adam, because of rezoning a lot that was supposed to be for commercial and is now residential, and you know the area, and you see it's all retail that's over there. And I don't know what your reasons are for doing that. I haven't heard much from Scott or Dwight about why they voted yes, and I'd like to know. This Portola, I know that a couple of you live up there, and you know how busy that street is. Very busy. There's one school, one elementary school in that area. By putting those condos in there and putting homes in there, all those kids, and the agreement on the back of the contractor's agreement, I guess, puts those kids at the head of the line. They get to go there first. So what happens to all the other kids? They get bused to another school? You're going to homeschool them? What? So, yes, these people were really very angry when they were signing that petition. And they're very angry at all of you, and I thank you, Catherine, and I thank you, Peter, for trying to talk some sense. I don't agree with everything they say, and they're not always right about everything, but in this case, they were right. Dead right. And you should have listened to them. Y'all took oaths, and those oaths of office are in the Santa Ana courthouse right now, and I can pull them. You took oaths of office for all of us, not just those people that you feel you want to protect. All of us in Lake Forest. All of us, including the children. If anything happens to one child, the blood is going to be on your hands.
We've had no further requests.
Right back to council.
Well, obviously, I'm very opposed to this project. I mean, here's essentially the background. That the person that's asking for this rezoning, because this is the rezone now we're talking about, doesn't own the land. Last meeting indicated didn't know if they were going to ever build a project or whether they were going to just sell it off to somebody else, kind of like what they did earlier in the city. So they have a track history in the city of doing that. It's not an empty building. There's an ongoing business there, Elite Automotive, and in fact, earlier this evening, this city council just approved a warrant for Elite Automotive for the city truck vehicles that are repaired at that facility. It's an ongoing and growing business. So that's kind of where we are as a starting fact. This is an ongoing business area. And it was interesting, it was just raised, at the hearing, nothing was really said. I mean, even the developer didn't make a presentation. And then 2 council members didn't say anything. And I think the question was a valid one. And to date, we have heard nothing. It seems you really have an obligation to advise the public as to what your supposed reasonings are. And so, for example, I mean, one of the things that has come up, and we have talked about, so I won't go into it in detail, is, the staff very clearly said that one of the key questions, and actually it's been a question in the zone change all along, is what's the impact of the current 4,000 plus homes that have been approved? And the staff requested a study that they indicated would specifically include how the 4,000 new homes approved through the OSA might affect the demand for commercial uses on the subject property and the timing associated with this consideration. Key point. A key question not addressed in the study commissioned by Brookfield and Trumark. So, Councilman Rasa, wouldn't that be some important information you would want to know before making a decision?
I think at various times the city could have chosen to conduct that study. What I was opposed to was pushing that study onto a developer themselves, basically trying to have them, force them to do a study that may or may not conflict with what they're suggesting. Well, so, and I've said before, and I've said it to a number of people, I can't remember if I've said it from the mic here, but I have no problem with the study. I just have a problem with who pays for it, and I'm very consistent with that, and you've heard me say that just 2 weeks ago.
It was pretty interesting because that study was actually approved with Mayor Voigt's vote early on. The money had been submitted. It was all prepared to go. The contractor was online. And yet, then immediately after the election, it's pulled. And there was really no reason to do so. Everything was in motion. So, I don't understand why that would be such a problem, particularly in light of the other things that occurred during the election. But, okay.
Regardless of the previous council's decision, I've made my position pretty clear, and I'll continue to do so, and I'm being very consistent with that. So I don't see a conflict there. Because some new people come onto a council, there's going to be an ideological shift sometimes, maybe not in others. And, so that's what's happened here. There's no other answer for it than that.
Well, it's too bad ideology is the key. Now, is it also your opinion that single-family homes is good planning for this area, where you have commercial streets on 3 sides and arterial on another?
I don't know that I necessarily want to engage in a back and forth here. I'd be happy to explain my position, but with respect to residential, yeah, I think that it's going to be fine in this area. What we've had recently has not worked, and I've also stated on a number of occasions that I think that in the long term, cities are going to need to rely more on residential, and the commercial base will end up shrinking because a lot of sales are moving online. I've said that a number of times, and I honestly believe that we're going to have to take a look at how the city's zoned, and you've brought up that you'd like to see a general plan update. I can appreciate that, and I've supported that. I think that we're going to have to look at that and try to see what makes sense moving forward. Last meeting you said that you wanted to take a look out 35 years. That's what I do every single day. When I ran as a private business person who focuses on the future. If I don't, my employees lose jobs. Okay? And so that's what I think the people of Lake Forest voted for. They voted for someone who has that private business background. Okay, so when I look out into the future, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at whether the number of commercial centers that we have in town is going to make sense 35 years from now, 40 years from now, 50 years from now. That's what we have to plan for today. I'm not going to be here 35 years from now. But that's what I'm focused on. And so, yes, I believe that we're going to need a little bit more residential in town. And we've approved quite a bit. We're approving a small amount more, talking about 5%. In this particular area, commercial hasn't worked. The comment's been made about elite automotive. Okay, we've been talking about this topic for a number of months now, and Elite Automotive has had the opportunity to come to talk to us. I haven't seen a letter, haven't seen them come to the mic and say they're worried about being dislocated or anything like that. So my assumption would be that they're going to move their business to another location. They're just not going to decide to close up shop. If they felt like they were going to be displaced, I'm sure that they'd be at that podium right now talking to us about it, but they haven't. So that's not an issue for me.
You were also asked, do you wish to say anything? Sure. Oh, absolutely.
If you will just bear with me for one moment. Number one, you stated there was talk of pushing the price onto the developer. But Peter, one thing you may have forgotten, I had arranged for them to get it free. How much pushing is that when you're going to get it free? Please don't leave that out. I pulled a lot of strings to get it free, did a lot of homework to get it free, and they still did not act upon it. And when a developer do not want to get a peer review, and it's free, that gives me great angst right there. And as far as residents, while we're pushing for residents, you have to find a way to push for school, because those schools are already overcrowded. And that's a component that is not pushed for. There's some agreements that was out of the city's control. It was not the city council, the school district, that we do not have control over our school district. And the developers made the decision. In fact, one of the developments adamantly wanted a school. Their project was going forth for a school, and they made the decision. But there was no reason for the business, for the developers to feel they were overwhelmed with fees or anything, because anything on that list that was not done was already authorized and okay for free. You can't get any better than that. And when you got regional people that do those tests and do those examinations for all over our region. Now remember, Southern California Association of Government is the largest association of government in the whole United States of America. And their CEO says, Kathy, your city's a member city. Have them send whatever list they have, whatever punch list that your staff feel they need, I will get it done free by the top-notch people. So that was not shoving some expense on business, because the others, they had to pay their own. But to sell the argument, that was done. Thank you, Peter. Just didn't want you to leave out that little component.
The subject came up, why, and I'm going to respond to that. I've been a resident of Lake Forest since 1978, and I've seen Lake Forest change a lot. What I see in the Foothill Auto Center is some dilapidated old dealerships that are not doing anything. The fact is that I want the project, I want something to be done with the land. The fact that the businesses, whether it be Mercedes-Benz or Foothill Ranch, I got a list of them here. Pepino's, Outback Steakhouse, Rudy's, 24-Hour Fitness, Restore, Chunky Cheese, Denny's, Islands, Black & Decker, everybody that I have talked to on my side sees the importance of doing something of value in that property. So it's just sometimes, we don't always have to agree, but the fact is, trust me when I say, whether it be Mayor Peter Herzberg, who I disagree with on this issue, or he disagrees with me, or Ms. Kathy McCullough, we're all trying to do our best here. And the fact that this little token of change here is just a small margin of what is happening. The fact that we have 4,000 new homes coming to Orange County off of Alton and Bake. The developers, when I first came on as city councilman, the first thing I sat down with them and we looked at the plot plans and the development agreement, I asked, where's the school? Saddleback Unified School District did not want to put a school in there. So the fact that they're the ones that are the key keepers of the schools and where the schools are going to be placed, it really takes it out of my hand. I can't do nothing about that. But what I can do is I can support a business which is, I think, a gem for our cities, which is Mercedes-Benz, and help them, because they can't sell cars at the location when you have 2 vacant auto dealerships across the street. So what we're doing here is something that's moving the ball forward, and some of you may disagree with it, but the fact is that, trust me when I say that, we've all spent sleepless hours on this and sleepless nights, because this has been a I mean, anytime you have discontent, it's a problem. And I feel for all of you, and I understand, but the fact is that we're moving the city forward. $9.8 million to the city for CPI, for a dog park, for a community garden, for maybe a future arena soccer. But the fact is that to leave it vacant and continue and go out every night and wish upon the star, twinkle, twinkle, little star, the auto center is not coming back. And the fact is that we have vacancies in our retail. So I think that the businesses, I think the people that I've talked to in the community, and obviously it's split, and we realize that. But trust us when we say that we're trying to do what's best for the city, and we won't all always agree. So, Ms. Kathy McCall.
Yeah.
Or you, Ms. Kathy.
Okay, fine.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, are you finished, Peter?
No, but go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no. I was just getting that little bit.
I was just going to
have the floor.
I was just going to comment. I mean, again, we heard what we'd heard before, that supposedly the businesses in the area want it. This is a community of 78,000 people. This is a community that has been, at least for the first 20 years, community-based. The community is the people. And this used to be a city where the people mattered. It used to be a city where the people were the ones that really drove it. And in fact, these two projects have been the most politicized and least transparent of any project in the city. There was no outreach to the public of any kind. That was admitted by the developers themselves. No outreach of any kind. And in fact, then the Planning Commission even had the gall to say, well, since they're a quarter-mile away, there's no need to talk to them with the Brookfield project. I mean, that was just appalling. So you have a situation where, apparently you have to be, immediately adjacent. Secondly, there's this comment about an auto mall. This city was not looking at an auto mall and hadn't been for over 10 years. And in fact, the Brookfield project is a perfect example. The GMC dealership closed because of the recession, which everybody knew, and GMC, we know, had to be bailed out by the federal government, for crying out loud. They closed a whole bunch of dealerships. We didn't stick around and wait for a dealership. We approved another project that was all commercial. Nobody was waiting for auto dealers. Nobody at all was. In fact, this city was amazed Mercedes-Benz wanted to come in. So nobody has ever, for at least 10 years or more, considered that that was going to be an auto mall. In fact, that entire area was supposed to be, so all those office buildings along the 241, originally, if you look at the Foothill Ranch Plan Community text, that's supposed to be auto malls. Well, apparently we gave up on that a long time ago, too. So the only auto dealership in there is Mercedes-Benz. That's it. Nobody's talking about an auto mall. Never. We haven't done that in a long, long time. So to continue references is just a farce. The fact of the matter is that commercial is something that's important. It's something that's needed. We have taken out 800 acres of commercial property already, and it really needed to be evaluated, and that's why I keep talking about the study that Mr. Voigt's voted for initially, but then after the election voted against it. When the fact is we needed that study to evaluate what was going on. Where is Lake Forest and where was it heading? Mr. Robinson talked about looking out 35 years. That was the whole point of the study. It was time to take a gut check on where we were and where we were going. We had just taken some major actions. And, after the election, in fact, it only took 25 minutes after being sworn in to all of a sudden start going after the study. Why was that the number one issue? I think we know why, and it was in the register the other day. The fact of the matter is that study should have been done. The purpose of that study was to do the kind of planning. And 3 members of this council took that away from staff to do the kind of planning that we normally do. We normally do evaluate things. We normally do look at the long range. We normally do look at the entire community. The OSA was a perfect example, and the community was thoroughly involved. El Toro Road was thoroughly involved. And these 2 projects are the first ones in my memory where the public was excluded. And it's extremely unfortunate. Also, as far as looking long term, again, you have to realize the precedence is being set. The staff reports, and in fact, this zoning document, ordinance talks about that now cramming in housing in the middle of a commercial area is complementary to commercial. So now how in the future are we ever going to tell some other developer that that's not accurate? And in fact, now, if a commercial developer wants to go in the middle of a residential community, how can we say that's not valid as well? It's complementary. It's right in the documents. The document they're talking about approving right now. That's antithetical. That is not Lake Forest. Lake Forest is a bedroom community that cherishes children, and that's what should be the focus. And that is not this. You look around, you will not find any other housing development anywhere in the city that looks anything like this. No tandem parking. It's not on arterials. It's not on commercial streets. You know, it's not crammed into the middle of a commercial area. Even as was pointed out by the Plan Commission, within a quarter mile. It takes a quarter mile to get to the nearest resident. That's just not Lake Forest. That's not what people have indicated in the surveys we've done, the quality of life of Lake Forest. And that's been the whole focal point. It's not, you know, what one person may have done or who may have contributed to what. It's what's good for the community and the quality of life. And so, you know, to me, this is a very dangerous precedent. It is totally inconsistent with what is Lake Forest and its quality of life. And it's, you know, truly unfortunate. And we now have over 1,000 signatures, and I don't know how many people you need to hear from that indicate they don't like it. And that'll grow. So, I mean, I don't know what needs to be done to get the attention, but I certainly appreciate the fact that there are people at Lake Forest who are trying to take their city back, and I certainly don't feel that this zone change should be approved.
Mayor. I think we talked a lot last time, so I don't have a lot to say this time, except I did want to put the little PS in there that Peter had missed. The only thing that I would like to make sure the point is out there in big bold print in your mind, if not on paper, is what will happen to our children. We have a lot of homes coming aboard. We also have some affordable housing and some senior housing coming aboard, not in these two projects, but we have 189 units coming aboard, very low, according to the RHNA, Regional Housing Needs Assessment we have to have, and low. And only 2 of those are not going to be, because that'll be for the managers to manage it. Then we have 57, and half of those are senior, and the other half is family. Then, on the north side of that project, we have 18 granny flats. And my theme is, these all was a part of our study to get the balance. When these homes are completed, because there's, like I said last time, there's already 1, 2, 3, and it's only the 2 of us up here that I think that really do see 35 years from now. In fact, I can even cut it down before that, before it's going to be a problem. When families move in, and all of these that's already approved, and these that are now a zone change to approve, when they get to having babies, and they start filling it up, and the school district has refused to take and let us put a school in, let the developers put a school in, some scam on the development fees for putting one in, or for whatever else we're going to need in the future. I'd like to know, what are you going to say to those children when they got to put those portables up there that you know they don't really keep out the sound? When they have to put those portables up there and fill them up, oh, that's right, some of them already got portables, right? They're going to need to put some more. And they'll have to squeeze through, take away their play activity so their brains can get stimulated and stuff. So when they put some more portables in the already filled schools that doesn't have enough room, what are you going to say to those children when they are overcrowded and they're going to be undereducated? Because with that many, they do not get the quality of education that we want our children to have, so they can compete on the open market and to make sure they go on to college. So I understand the business, but there has to be a business job balance This is why we did the opportunity study. This is what the region, the state, and all over wants. A job balance, job, housing, and school, all of that's got a balance. That's why the developers that went into our opportunity study was willing to put everything on hold and help get a balance. And as soon as we got it all down, had a balance, then let's change zones and shove this in here and shove that in there. You know, I have a real hard problem with putting my children's thoughts last or not at all. And that's where that gives me some great concern. So you need to ask yourself, will we be producing quality education for our children with the schools that are already overcrowded? When they come with the babies, and they have more babies, because some of these are starter places, they're going to be couples going to get in there. And when they start having them babies, or they bring them babies, you tell me what school that you're going to do, and how many more portables are going to be on our school grounds, shoving more kids in there, and it's been proven they don't get the quality education with more. And that's all I'm saying. My vote is going to stay the same, but that's all I want to say is, when does it trump our future? You talk about 35 years, those children are our future. And if they don't get the proper education, the problems we have now, they won't have 10 years, 20 years, 35 years from now. They will have even new problems. And if their brains have not been stimulated enough because they're overcrowded in those classes to come up with fixes of the messes we have made, I'm glad I won't be here to see it. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Mrs. Rose, is there any way, I'm going to police myself because some of us do not police ourselves, and I certainly have tried in the past, and sometimes I have failed. Can you set this up so that it'll give me a warning in 4 minutes, and then it goes red at 5? That's all I want to do tonight. Thanks, Scott. Very quickly, in the order it happened tonight.
I approve that.
No, I meant, thank you. Thank you. All right, start now. In the order it happened, Mrs. Rudolph, thank you so much. It was very big of you. I appreciate that. It is very big of you. Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Gardner, I'm somewhat disappointed that you asked me how I can support or be comfortable with Mr. Smith's advice that everything's clear when I am the one who actually sued the city. I do not know what transpired a few years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago. I wasn't here. What I can tell you is that in the last 7 months, and I cannot talk about that case, what I can tell you is that in the last 7 months or 9 months, wow, time flies, Mr. Smith takes direction from the council. I do not know what happened 2.5, 3 years ago. What I can tell you, again, at the risk of being redundant, Mr. Smith takes direction from the council. So I can only assume that 3 years ago when the decision was made, it was the council's decision. So I have a problem with that decision made by the council. Mr. Smith, that decision had nothing to do with him, as far as I can tell from the last 9 months. As far as the schools and school district, I've already addressed that. I'm not going to repeat myself. As far as traffic, I've already addressed that. I'm not going to repeat myself. Mrs. Elizabeth Smith, who left, unfortunately, I hope that somebody reaches out to her and have a request on my part that she watches this part of the tape at 8:30. She's not here, but I'm still responding to her. It was very disingenuous of her to stand here and bring my lawsuit up and some of the derogatory comments. This particular lady has had at least 2 opportunities in the last 3 or 4 weeks to approach me personally. I held 2 town hall meetings. One of them she was present in, and she also ran into me, or I ran into her, at the event that Mr. Carter held a couple of weeks ago at the Sun and Silk, at the Lake 2. So she has had 2 occasions to ask me to ask me those concerns, and I would address them for her. Except she comes here knowing that I cannot. I got to stay quiet till my turn, and when my turn is up, she's gone. That was very disingenuous. I would expect more of my fellow American. Tandem parking, I've already addressed it. The politicization of this project, these 2 projects, I've already addressed it. I've already said that I believe that there were extraordinary, extortionary in nature measures that were going to be imposed upon these developers, and I'm proud to say that I did what I could to not let that happen. I believe in a level playing field. For those who care, they can contact me separately, and I'll bring you up to speed if you're interested. Again, I said last time that we have 1 attorney for the purpose of these sessions. I recognize only 1 attorney, with all due respect to Mr. Herzberg and his experience as an attorney. For the purpose of this session and these sessions, there was only 1 attorney that I listened to, and that's Mr. Smith. Let's see. Commercial is really on its way out, people, believe me. Staples, right down the street in Footy Ranch, is moving out. Staples is moving out now. So we're going to have the second Staples having left us. Right across where close to where the development is taking place. I've already, Mr. Herzberg asked how many people does it take. I've already addressed that. If you look at the tapes, I defined what a critical mass is, and I defined what it takes to overturn a decision such as this one. Refer to my critical mass definition. As far as the zone change, Mr. Herzberg moments ago indicated that the council approved the zone change. This has gone so back and forth. I think, if I remember right, and I may be wrong, but it was the Planning Commission that approved the zone change. It wasn't the council. Was it the council? It was the council that approved the zone change? I thought it was, no? It was the council. Who was it? The council?
The Planning Commission was told they were only an advisory body, were not allowed to make a decision, and did not make a decision. It was the City Council that approved the zone change.
So, Mr. Herzberg remembers correctly?
No, yes, I think that's right.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Herzberg opined that this sets a precedent for other developers in the future. I don't think it does, but I'm not an attorney. The city attorney can address that, and I'm done. Thank you.
Did the city attorney want to address that?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, if you'd like me to. I think the reference there is to a compatibility finding that needs to be made to amend the general plan and to amend the zoning ordinance. It requires that the council find a horizontal compatibility. That means that adjacent uses are compatible with the new use in question. And the enactments the council's adopted there with the general plan amendment have some pretty specific findings there that are based on this record, which had particular attention to those adjacencies, and they find that they worked for the reasons enumerated in the staff report.
You may.
Mr. Smith, I appreciate the explanation. I'm not going to lie to you. A little simpler English.
Yeah.
A little simpler language, if I could beg of you. It's not you, it's me. What I understood you say moments ago, was that this does not set a precedent. In other words, just because we approved this for a mixed use does not mean we have to approve somebody else who does not meet our expectations.
Thank you, Mr. Nick, for clarifying your question. Mayor and Council, the answer to that is no. This is not precedential. It's based on the very specific facts
that are
enumerated in this record.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor.
I just find that last explanation phenomenal. For the city attorney to sit there and say that this is not precedential, maybe it's not a legal precedent, but that's not what you deal with when you're sitting on a city council and the staff has to deal with this. We have seen numerous times even during his tenure, where a decision was made, and then people immediately come in and say, well, you did it for him, do it for me. That's the precedential nature. Nobody on this dais ever said it was legally precedential. I am really getting tired of the city attorney misconstruing what is going on here. The fact of the matter is, we have been through this time and again with projects. And time and again we hear that. Well, you did it for him, do it for me. And don't think, particularly when the staff specifically puts in this ordinance that they want to approve, residential land uses are anticipated to be complementary to the retail, office, service, and medical land uses. So that we're going to have a statement from the City Council and a legal document saying residential uses and commercial uses are complementary. And we're going to hear about that. And that's going to be very problematic as far as trying to deal with these issues in the future, as opposed to allowing the Planning Commission to do what they wanted to do, what they requested to do, and were not allowed to do, which is a full analysis of this situation, and have the studies that they needed to have. But we'd come up with a document where the City Council is going to say, having residential stuck into a commercial area is complementary.
Call motion.
I move to move the item.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
And on that, Mayor Pro Tem, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. evening, Lake Forest City Council meeting. And at this time, Madam Clerk.
Agenda item 11, commission applicant interviews and appointment process. Planning commissioner for the remainder of a 4-year term expiring December 2014, submitted by city clerk.
Okay. And are there any public comments for this item?
Yes, Your Honor, we have 3 requests to speak. Mary Axelrod, followed by Jim Gardner.
Mary Axelrod, Lake Forest. I just want to remind everybody, and I'll be real brief this time, that there is media sitting in the audience. Your vote is going to be recorded and reported, and that's how Lake Forest people and people in the Orange County area are educated, by reading what they see. Thank you.
Jim Gardner, followed by David Herzberg.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. My name is Jim Gardner. I live in Lake Forest, and if we haven't already said it, God bless Tim Hughes for all his work and his good work. Tim Hughes. I was busy reviewing the applications, and I noticed some information was busy. Couldn't find any background checks on the applicants. Here we are, a $40 million a year business with hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, and we're appointing people to a planning commission that oversees multiple millions of dollars of projects every year, and no one knows if one of the members has spent time in jail for embezzlement, bribery, corruption, or whatever. We don't even know if they're a citizen of the United States. We don't even know if they're a resident of Lake Forest. I'm not saying there's a crook among them. Actually, I know many of them, and the ones I know, as far as I know, are all upstanding citizens. But what do I know? Well, there is something I know. I know that in the past, people have been appointed to commissions in this city who have worked for one or more of you, who have campaigned for one or more of you, and made financial contributions to one or more of you. This must stop. The City Council is not a playpen to promote ideological beliefs at the expense of the citizens. We are a multi-million-dollar enterprise that values and protects our investments. Is that what we are? Or are we a jerkwater town that reeks of corruption? Is there any serious business? You're a serious business. I know you're a serious business owner. I know you're a serious business owner. Is there any serious business owner who wouldn't protect his investment by doing a background check on the key personnel that they hire? I ask that you postpone tonight's selection process, and for that, I apologize to the people who are here and who expect to be interviewed. But I cannot see how you can, in all consciousness, as stewards of our city, allow this process to go forward. Before you check with the applicants, obviously you'll need their permission to do background checks. Here's a tip for you. The guy who doesn't give you the permission to do the check, you probably didn't want him in the first place. But I cannot see how you could go forward without this information. Let's be serious. This is not a jerkwater town. We have hundreds of millions of dollars of assets in play. These people sit and make decisions worth millions and millions of dollars. You cannot go ahead in all good consciousness without having done background checks. Thank you very much. I hope one of you will make a motion to postpone. Thank you.
Thank you. You were done. Okay, finish. Next speaker.
David Herzberg.
I'm David Herzberg. I'm a 23-year resident of Lake Forest, original resident of Portola Hills. I'd like to offer you all a kumbaya moment, but it doesn't look like we're going to go there tonight. I have one thing that I'm going to say and then lead off in a couple other directions, and that's called legacy. You folks right there, your job is to leave something behind. That's your job. And you know what? Sometimes that's about capitalism. Sometimes that's about conservation. Sometimes it's about, like, doing nothing sometimes. Because sometimes doing nothing can be an answer. I grew up in Anaheim. I watched people like you destroy a town I loved. I left that town. They went in and mowed down a downtown. Mowed it down because they were brilliant, far-sighted business people. And for 30 years it was a wasteland. And they're still trying to recover that. I moved to Fullerton. Very interesting. Fullerton preserved its downtown. It was dead when I lived there. I lived there from 1979 to 1990. Very few businesses, but they kept those buildings. Do you know what's going on in downtown Fullerton right now? It's a supercharged engine of free enterprise, like capitalism at its best, with restaurants and entertainment venues. But they did nothing other than protect those buildings. I'm going to jump back to the Brookfield thing. I just think it's a hodgepodge. I don't care how you guys want to, you want to say it's mixed juice, you want to use all this great terminology. You guys, any of you urban planners, do you have a degree in urban planning? I don't think so. It's a hodgepodge down there, and that's what you're going to leave us. Maybe one of the things you should think about is just let it sit. We got 4,000 houses coming online. 4,000! Think about that. And then the final thing I want to talk about is the Planning Commission. Because I got highly involved with Portola Center. And there's some men in this room that I really respect. And women. And city staff, who I've come to respect. Didn't trust a lot of you guys originally. Now I do. We went through quite a process. But the planning commissioners were the people, they at a certain point, when I had given up complete faith in this city, they did things that changed the direction of that project and made it better. I've been going to planning commission since the election. I am not impressed with the new appointees. And that's an understatement. These guys, they're on tricycles with training wheels. And I don't mean to insult people, but I want competence on that commission. And so, my time is ending, but what I'm going to really ask, we got 2 people in training. Don't add another newbie. And so I'm going to put forward 2 names today. I don't care who you pick. But please, please look at David Carter and Terry Anderson, because I want competence back on that commission. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
We've had no additional requests to speak.
Okay, and so I'd like to address background checks. Is that protocol? What is required for commissioners?
Mayor and Council, it takes some research to understand and determine whether that can be done. What I have learned is that a background check requirement can only be imposed by policy, a formal policy of the City Council. You don't have one on now that would apply to this series of interviews.
Would that be a policy that is ongoing in any other city in the County of Orange right now?
Mayor and Council, don't know for sure, but
have you know of any?
I don't know of any. Haven't been able to find any that do that.
Right.
Mayor?
And in light of what Dr. Gardner so beautifully articulated, it may be moments premature, it may not be. At some point that you see it's advisable, I would like to make a motion for us to request the city attorney and the staff to come back to us with guidelines as to what we can expect, what we can do to make sure that we don't have felons and we don't have unqualified individuals on our planning commission. I would like to ask what the thought of other council members is. No?
I'll respond.
Okay.
Mayor? I already spoken to our city attorney and asked him to bring me a little information. One of the first things that I seen was on the applications for commissioners, that's planning and rec, it says, "Commissioners are part-time employees and receive a salary of $118 per meeting, not to exceed $238 per month." Now, if they are being referred to as part-time employees, we don't have any employees working for us that we haven't did a background check on. Okay? Now, you don't classify city councils and mayors as part-time employees. But in the meantime, if you're going to do it on the Rec Commission, Plan Commission, for me, we're going to do it, you do it across the board. So I asked, we need some information on how to go about doing it. And the thing is, if you go ahead and appoint a planning commissioner tonight, you can have it where the next time we start, because it's not retroactive. A lot of these things are not retroactive. But we do, you hear me say it all the time, you got to hit the ground running. And if you can't hit the ground running in Lake Forest, you need to run somewhere else and apply. Because we are a city that moves. We're in the process of developing the last of our land that we have. So this is something very vital. But we will have another appointment coming up next year. And so we need to be able to come together and give some instructions to our staff so they can bring back this information and we can see how we can tweak it. Now, we may have to get real creative when you find a way to do a background check on council members, because they're only low volunteers, about 2 degrees below a volunteer. And so the thing is that we do state this for whatever purpose, it's there. So that's something you can bounce off of that. But we need to make sure that it's legal, that we don't get into any litigations because you're doing it. So I'd like to take, are you making the motion, or you want me to second it, or what? That we take and ask the staff to bring that information back to us, how we do it.
Actually, I was just thinking about, if I may I?
Go right ahead.
I was just thinking about something. As you were saying that, maybe we can have a hybrid approach. And what I mean is, for tonight's purposes, given that the applicants are already here, given that we may be handicapped today because we have only 4 members, why don't we proceed for tonight's purposes, and appoint one, and at the very same time, this evening, we would look to Mr. Smith, and in this case, he'll have plenty of time to come back to us with guidelines as to what we can expect,
What we can and cannot do.
what we cannot do, because we surely don't want to invade somebody's privacy. And once we get that information, how we can go about keeping it confidential and so forth, because we don't want to be liable, of course, for any invasion of privacy.
Mayor, what I'd suggest is that with a consensus of 2 council members, you can ask for a future agenda item to be brought back. It would be the options available to the council for considering a new policy, and we'd be happy to do that at some future time. It could not apply to the set of commissioners because it would need to be on the books, but I understood the idea being before the next round of appointments, we'd bring back options, and I think we could do that with information from the Attorney General, who would need to release the information, attention to the constitutional principles that have been mentioned, and then a survey of whether other cities have similar procedures, and we could bring that back to you at some future agenda.
The constitutionality of that and the privacy of people putting their names in for that is a concern to me. But more so is what is the are other cities doing it? I mean, maybe something we can look into.
That's what we'd have to look into.
Mayor, one of the things when it comes back to us, I want to make sure that the component, whatever component or configuration you come up with legally, that there is a way, even with the Transparency Act, that if we can have the Transparency Act on employees' business, you should be able to have the transparency on that. I don't feel that should be earmarked, this person got this or that. So make sure you got some way of doing that, because I don't think that we need to do that. So, and if you can find some examples, that we will have some choices. But I do feel we can go on tonight. We need that 5th person on there tonight. And not an amateur or somebody who's coming here to learn or put it on their resume. Somebody to know what they're doing.
Mayor White? Yes. So if I may ask, Mr. Smith, you do have consensus, correct?
Yeah, it
I
only
think
takes two
it's
of us to
Mayor,
do
is
it.
that,
Between the
They
two?
have
Yeah.
two.
Between
It's
between
two.
Mrs. McCullough and I, yes, thank you.
we'll have the record reflect that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor.
And on that,
Yes, Mayor and council members.
as we proceed, why don't you explain how the voting will proceed?
How the evening will proceed is that at this point, we will ask the applicants to leave the council chambers and wait in our activities room with the Assistant City Clerk, Martha Halverson, and we will call them in one at a time, where they will be given an opportunity to speak for approximately 3 minutes relating their qualifications, and then the council members will ask them a series of questions. Each applicant will be asked the same series of questions. And once all of the applicants have been interviewed, then the council will mark a ballot. Each of the names are written on ballots that have been provided to the council. Each applicant that receives one vote in the first round will move to the second round. So round 2 would have a maximum of 5 people in it. We have 5 council members. Each person requires 1 vote. So we'd have a maximum of 5 people moving to round 2. And at that point, if there's not a consensus, the second round, moving from second round to third round, would require 2 votes.
All right.
You mean we would vote to move to another round? Is that what you're saying? You're not talking about appointing a planning commission with 2 votes?
No. Moving forward, no. It would take a consensus of 3, a majority vote of 3. And then also, just for clarification, pursuant to Section 2.6.050, which fills vacancies, the requirements for sitting on the council are spelled out in Title II of the Municipal Code, and it requires that at all times the applicants, at all times during their incumbency, be registered voters of the city. I have verified the voter registration status of all of the applicants, and they are all Lake Forest registered voters.
Thank you.
Mayor. I see where 2 have withdrew their nomination.
Yes, and we've had a third withdrawal this evening during the proceedings.
Which one was the third?
Karen Knox.
Karen Knox, okay.
I'll do question 4.
At this time, if we could have the applicants leave the room, that would be
They
great.
got to leave.
Oh,
They're still here.
trying to move it ahead.
You're doing question 4, Peter.
Yeah. Now we're safe?
Yes.
Okay, I'll do question 4.
I won't ask any questions. I'll keep my Clarence Thomas tradition.
We're ready. Are we ready? No, she's not.
Did you, Mayor, did you say which one you're going to take? 5. You're taking 5. I got my own, and I'm going to ask, because even though these are important to ask,
Okay. You can, that's your problem.
can we ask more than one? As long as we asked it to each person?
Just one per person, because otherwise you would be unfair. Yeah. Well, then everybody can ask you.
Yeah, if you want to.
No, I think we're just keep it the way. Can you keep the one?
No. We've always had it where you
She wants to choose questions. Yeah. Go ahead. All right, go ahead. Go ahead. All right. You want permission. All right, we're ready.
Sorry, we had to do a little negotiating.
Okay, actually, the first applicant is not present this evening, so we're moving straight to Terry Anderson.
That was a she.
Am I on? Okay. I have rather brief notes. You all know me, I know. Terry Anderson, 32-year resident of Lake Forest. For the sake of brevity and the sake of time, I have very short notes. I just have really 3 bullet points I wanted to cover for this position. You all know how important this position is because, as you've heard from others speaking tonight, the Planning Commission has been a very special kind of commission in the community. For many years, it functioned very smoothly and very collegially to create the best community that we could possibly create. So, the number one thing I think you need to think about is experience. I know that puts me in the pool, but I'm not the only person who has experience that's on this list. So clearly, that has to be priority in your selection process. But some of the other things that you need to think about that I noted are dedication to the community and involvement in the community. We have a lot of people in this town who have been here for a very long time, but we don't see that many who truly get involved in the activities and the functioning of this town. I think that that's really important because if you don't get involved, you don't know what's going on. And, excuse me, Councilman Robinson, but you're right about the 35-year forward-looking of this community, but I plan to be here in 35 years in the community. So the decisions that I make will affect not only everyone else, but they affect me too. So perhaps that was an oversight in the way you stated it under the pressure of the moment. But I think that that's really important, that long-range thinking needs to be taken into account that it's your community as well as your own life. This kind of plays, my third bullet point plays into what Mr. Gardner was saying about trust and integrity. I would certainly support background checks on anyone who does any work for the city, on any of the commissions. I think that's a great idea because it plays into the cooperation of what happens within the commission that you're working on. Cooperation is extremely important. Lastly, not an official bullet point, but probably the most important point that I think I can put across to you. At some occasion in the past, I've spoken with every single one of you personally. We've talked about what goes on in the commission. We've talked about the community. We've talked about what's transpired in this community. The politicalization of the governance in this town is appalling. I think that it's really important that any decision you make pulls that component out of your decision making. As I said one other time I was standing up here, that what you say is as important as how you say it, and everyone will think about every decision that you make. We're seeing it in the press now, so one thing I ask you to do is keep politics out of any decision that you make. Don't be affected by those around you that press you to make a decision, because it's the right political decision to make. This isn't about politics. This is about kids and about community. Make the right choice for the community. Thank you. Questions?
You want to do it roll call order? Last. Okay, go from left to right.
I'm going to ask the same question of everyone, just so that you all have a fair chance to answer. The vast majority of housing units built within the city are 25 to 40 years old. What action should the city focus on to ensure the integrity of our residential neighborhoods?
I think every one of us lives in one of those, sans perhaps one of you up there. What should we do? Community outreach is really important. I think that we have people within our own staff who've done a marvelous job of creating resources for our residents to go to help them do what's right for their own property as well as their own neighborhoods. Any way that we can reach out to federal funding to help some of our more original parts of the community down around the freeway, perhaps, I think it'd be a marvelous idea, because having walked through those neighborhoods, you really get a different feel for it. And some of those neighborhoods really do need some help. So anything we can do to reach out to them, if it's a financial matter, perhaps there's something we can do to help. I'm not certain if it's completely in the purview of the Planning Commission. I think that might be more in your job, but I know the Planning Commission would be wholeheartedly behind doing anything to improve.
Thank you.
What do you see as the most important planning issue facing the city, and how would you suggest it be addressed?
Well, obviously, the most topical item right now is the development of and rezoning of the auto property. I don't even think I need to go into any of the subject matter on that. Most all of you know where I stand on that. And you've all done a great job of bringing out every possible nuance of the project. I think what's probably, if we look past that, though, to what's coming into our community, continuing to work with these developers to integrate what they're developing into the community. As Mr. Herzberg was speaking about Portola Hills, reaching out to the residents of the area and asking them what they want, getting joint meetings together so that they can come together with the developer and they can hash out what they don't like. And then they can also hear from the developer's side what he needs to do. I mean, we all understand he has property rights. He has the right to develop his property, but within certain parameters. We can come to a meeting of the minds. Reaching consensus is the most important part of our job. Ms. Ackerman was asked about, do you do a site visit? We had several site visits while I was sitting on the Planning Commission. Extremely important, because you get out and you kick the dirt around. You get a touch and feel for it. So you do the same thing with the residents, you end up with a better product.
Well, thank you for your service to the city, first of all. I know we haven't always agreed, but I do admire you for your service. And so, as a member of the City Council Planning Commission, how can you and how did you manage the city's goals and priorities?
Well, the first thing we had to do was figure out what the city really wanted. Sometimes there was a little bit of cloudiness coming out of council as to where we were going. I can tell you when I started on the Planning Commission, there were a lot of questions that I had as a new person to say, we don't have a policy or procedure on this, or we don't have a guideline on that. So that's one of the major goals that I think planning still needs to continue to enhance, because it gives you the focus of what the community really wants to have, so that when you have developers come to the community, you can show to them, look, this is what we want right here. Can you provide something that fits into that? Instead of trying to shove a square peg into a round hole and ending up with nothing but conflict all the way down the road. So I think that that's probably the biggest thing.
Thank you. Ms. Kathy, you're up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to ask a double hitter.
A double header?
Yes.
Great.
Which it may not be effective with you or with Dave, but the others it will. But I have to ask the same thing to everyone. I'd like to know if you are familiar with reading tentative maps, blueprints, mobility, the logistics of mobility in a project, and the line of sight.
Yes.
And approximately how many planning commission meetings have you attended?
Yes, 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 and yes. And
The last one you can just say a lot.
yeah, a lot. 6 years, probably about, average of 20 or 24, about 20 meetings a year. What's the math there? A lot of them. That's the ones I attended while I sat there, not sitting out there. So a bunch of them. So, yeah, I know all that stuff.
I know.
Okay. What else?
That's all.
Oh, okay.
Well, the thing is I went over these, each one individually. I always do. And some people don't know what the planning commission is, so that's what I came up with that will give me a better gauge.
I think it's a valid question because even though I had experience on reading plans and such before I got here, you're asked to consider a lot of different matters. You're not just asked to look at the map and say, oh yeah, I see that that's a building. To think about all the elevation changes. We've had some major issues on elevation changes because our community is so hilly. Making sure that lines of sight for various homes doesn't interrupt the other one. You have lines of sight on roadways. It's been a huge issue up in Portola on Saddleback. So, yeah, I'm pretty aware of it. And plus, I live just off of Geronimo. We got a major line of sight issue every time I pull out of my own neighborhood. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Davis.
I'm honored to know you. I don't have a question for you. I thank you for being here, and I'm honored to know you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Our next applicant is Kim Back, who is not with us this evening. She did give me permission to share with you that were it not for her scheduled surgery today, she would be here. She asked that her qualifications and background as delineated in her application be considered by the council. She does wish to remain in consideration, but she's unable to be here tonight. Our next applicant that is present is Thomas Cagley.
Good evening. You may.
Good evening, Your Honor.
Thank you for, first of all, applying. Thank you.
Your Honor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, staff, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I am Tom Cagley, a relatively new resident of Lake Forest, having moved here in July 2012 from Yorba Linda. I'm not here as a resume builder, however, I can assure you I want to spend the rest of my life here. I want to live in a good community. It's a lovely community here. I bring a lot of experience in planning for physical development of military communities in Germany and California and other civilian communities in Virginia and Texas. In Virginia, I worked at the county and city governments in community development as a member of a board charged with protecting historic districts from encroachment and unsightly and unwanted development around them. In Texas, it was a different type of community development. I was on a member of the emergency reaction team who would be called to Texas from California to help with disaster recovery, disaster mitigation. For a tremendous amount of community planning after the fact of the disasters and hopefully plan ways to prevent future disasters. We don't face too much of that here, but it could be a possibility. More recent community planning has been over in LA Air Force Base, where I was a project manager as a civilian contractor twice, 2003 and 4 and 2007 and 8, developing an Air Force military community in El Segundo and San Pedro at Fort MacArthur. In this, I directed a staff of 22 professional people, including environmental specialists, engineers, and planners. In developing the master plan, maintaining the master plan, it was a 5-year plan, was continuing every year, moved down another year. It never got to the end of the 5 years we were there. My last planning experience was nearly 2 years ago when I was at Naval Air Station in Belle Chase, Louisiana. There, I was also in charge again of community planning and development. I was just there for 3 months on an emergency project program. Belle Chase has interesting challenges, thank God, we don't have here. They're 5 feet below sea level, and that's a different kind of a challenge for planning. You have to have a lot of lift stations. I'm used to submitting reports, which is part of the Planning Commission's responsibility in developing them. I worked for the Army as a civilian and as a member of the military force itself for many, many years. And our reports would go all the way to the Pentagon in some cases when I was in charge of construction and development projects in Europe for military communities. My final comments, I want to go back to Texas for a minute. As I said, I was a member of the Emergency Reaction and Response Team, and they would call me after disaster, hurricane, wildfires, mudslides. Never got there for a tornado or a blizzard, but I'd go there and spend 3 to 6 months there going through communities, helping them look forward to what had happened and find ways to prevent it, particularly the wildfire issue in 2011, which was very severe, not quite as bad as Sacramento. And you'll see many fires going on right now, but close. I developed and wrote the draft of a handbook for wildfire mitigation for homes built in wildfire areas, prone areas. And it was a good effort, and hopefully it's going to be published one of these days. In this capacity, I worked with FEMA and other state agencies. Here I worked with Air Quality Management District and water districts as a part of my job at the LA Air Force Base. These are all these experiences are all relevant to Planning Commission, because they bring experience. It may not be Lake Forest experience on Trabuco Canyon Road or Portola Road, but it's experience that can be used to planning. And I think that with that background, I do offer a lot to be considered for your consideration. I also would like to go back and address two things coming up this evening. One is the matter of background and security investigation. Have been a substitute school teacher here in Orange County. My gosh, they put you through a background investigation to end all background investigations. For 35 years as a military intelligence officer in the United States Army, I had top secret security clearances. I say that not to sound more qualified, but I don't see an issue of background investigations, nor should anybody else that wants to be considered for the position on this committee. And again, I want to say I'm not trying to build a resume. I'm 73 years old. I'm retired, although my wife says I've flunked retirement 7 times so far since I retired in 2000 from the Army. I just like the opportunity to serve on this Planning Commission. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you, and thank you for your service to the country.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you. Okay, we have some questions for you.
We're asking the same questions of everyone, so just to let you know that, and thank you for applying. The vast majority of housing units built within the city are 25 to 40 years old. What action should the city focus on to ensure the integrity of our residential neighborhoods?
Well, the military, and also in Texas and in Virginia, we relied on the inspector, the Department of Public Works Commission, to worry about these things, make certain that they met standards and were kept to code standards. Of course, the fire department comes into play here also with that, because they have standards that have to be maintained. You can't necessarily tell property owners they have to redo something, but you can check on them carefully and encourage them to have termite inspections. You have a vector control officer here. You know if there's vermin or termites or other issues that are bothering people. And all you can do is just be a proactive council, and not necessarily city council, but proactive staff in the Public Works Department and in the City Planning Department to make certain that these homes all meet standards and meet the codes.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
What do you see as the most important planning issue facing the city, and how would you suggest it be addressed?
I think there are two major planning issues facing this city. One is water, and that's all Southern California, and the other is transportation. In a paper a few days ago, it said there's going to be 9,000 homes added to the Great Park Plan, which is our next-door neighbor. And if we're adding 4,000 here, that's 13,000 homes being put into this community in this area. And water is a major concern in Southern California. I think we have to look forward to an aggressive recycling water business like they have in El Segundo and San Pedro, and develop a program for that in Lake Forest and expand it if one exists. And as far as transportation, that's always a touchy issue, particularly environmentalists. I think we can handle transportation. I'm most concerned about the water issue and where it's going to come from to feed provide for all these residents.
As a member of the City's Planning Commission, how can you be a messenger of the city's goals and priorities?
Well, I think that one never missed an opportunity to appear before groups, be it service groups, service organizations, homeowners associations, or other such people that want to meet with the Planning Commission. Always be open and available to them, just as you all are, and walk the park, as the Mayor Pro Tem says she has done, to find the potholes and the ruts that people get caught in. Again, as a public official, one would have to just be available to the public and not have a closed door. And I realize it's just a part-time job, but that doesn't mean it's part-time work necessarily sometimes.
So true. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your service, and thanks for applying. And whether you get it or not, please stay involved.
I'm sorry?
That's a P.S. Whether you receive the appointment or not, please stay involved.
Oh, I can't-
Got a lot of wisdom there that we can spread around. I have a series of things I want to ask, and you can answer when I go down my little list. First of all, are you familiar with tentative maps, blueprinting, tentative maps and blueprints, and the logistics of mobility within a community or commercial, a variance, and the line of sight for checking out line of sight, what that is, and how many planning commission meetings have you been to?
In this county, I've been to none. I went to one, they canceled it. And as to your other questions, first, I was a certified ADA specialist, if you're talking about that kind of mobility, in Texas for 5 years. I had that certification, carried that out to California. As far as line of sight for traffic, if you're referring to that, I understand those rules also, they vary from city to city and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But they're critical, and one has to do that. But that's up to planners, designers to take that into consideration. Did that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sir.
Good evening, sir. I thank you for applying. I have reviewed your application, and I am not asking any question tonight. I have reviewed your application. I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next applicant is David Carter.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. My name is David Carter. I'm a 27-year resident of Lake Forest. Previously was planning commissioner, was one from 1994 to 2013. Just for reference, I am a U.S. citizen, just thought I'd let you know. And I hope so. They haven't let me know. And my background's totally clear. Anyway, I'm here to offer my services to the city once again. The Planning Commission is something that I have enjoyed immensely. I think I have a talent for it. I know I have the background and experience. Over the 19 years that I served previously, we took great measures to ensure that what we were doing was methodical, well thought out, and gave the applicant all opportunity to express their concerns, needs, desires, and then brought in the constituency, the public, asked them. And what we got at the end, I think, was best for not only the community, the city, but the residents. So that's my philosophy of how I approach what we do. I do not promise anything to anyone. The only thing I promise that I make is what comes before me at the commission is evaluated honestly, fairly, and I will listen to all sides. So I would offer myself to any questions that you might have, and thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thanks for applying. Asking the same question
All right.
here. So the question that I have for you and all is the vast majority of housing units built within the city are 25 to 40 years old. What action should the city focus on to ensure the integrity of our residential neighborhoods?
Part of the process that we go through, that has gone through, is that we have an opportunity on a quarterly basis to have code enforcement present to us any issues that might be concerned by category. And with those, we're able to address those issues or ask for information pertaining to them, make suggestions as to whether or not we want to address a particular problem that may be there, possibly ask staff to provide us with information as to what is the cause. Work with the Housing Community Development, see if they have any block grants that are available, and make those offerings so that you're able to address the specific issue. Sometimes it may be a traffic problem. Sometimes it might be just a maintenance issue. So you just have to work through staff and through the resident, and generally a lot of times through the business itself, to ask them to bring themselves either into compliance or if there's any assistance we can provide them, we try to help them with that. So that's most. It's just the interaction between that you have to ensure.
Great, thank you.
What do you see as the most important planning issue facing the city, and how would you suggest we address it?
Well, I've got a little different spin on that, because what I see is the credibility and the relevance of the Planning Commission itself as to what its function is. In 19 years, we had less than a handful of appeals. Of that, I can think of only 2 that were overturned during my tenure. And what I have concern with is that you don't wish to have the applicant come before the commission with the expectation that all they have to do is present themselves there and then appeal. The appeal is a process. Hopefully that is taken care of at the commission. The commission's responsibility is to work those issues out, come up with the best solution for all involved. That way the appeal process is if we have a particular component within the project, which we had on 2 occasions I can think of, one pertaining to a fence, the other one to sign and a barbecue. And a lot of those issues may be, we look at or should look at safety. Does it comply? Is it compatible with the business or area that it's adjacent to? And those are the primary concerns that the commission has to take. But you want to have the commission be seen as that unit that you go to that is going to resolve the problem. You want it to stay there and have them be accepted as the deciding factor. I think I thanked for that.
You did. Lost my notes.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for applying, and thank you. And I apologize for missing your boys and girls thing. I actually do have a check, and I was sick, so I am going to be seeing you again.
Thanks.
So, as a member of the City Council's Planning Commission, how can you be a messenger for the city's goals and priorities?
You have to be involved. You show up to the events. You participate in the activity of the community. I personally have found it's best to be a part of the Chamber of Commerce, which I have been for the last 4 years, but my experience with the Chamber goes back to 1983. So you have to, with the businesses, be involved directly with what they're doing. Go down, look at it, see it, but you cannot promise anything. That's the one thing from the Commission standpoint. You cannot get too involved, because if you do, you have to recuse yourself, and you're not helping anybody at that point. I always make sure that when a decision is before me, I come to the Commission without anything predetermined. I don't have anything, I haven't got an agenda, but I want to hear what the project is, what's its relevance, and the pros and cons. You make the decision based on that. But you try to encourage them to, bring forward. And you work with staff. Staff is probably the most important aspect to it, because they bring to the Commission items that will answer the questions. And if you get the answers to those, then you're allowed to address some of the underlying issues. So you just have to be engaged totally.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for applying. And I just have a few things on my checkoff list to ask each person. And are you familiar with tentative maps?
Yes.
Logistic mobility, variance, line of sight, and blueprint. Sorry, I forgot to put that one in there. And how many planning commissions have you been to?
Let's see, I was on the Planning Commission. I came in when we adopted the general plan. That was in 1994.
94.
And I was off of the commission in January of 2013. During that period of time, I don't think I can count how many meetings I attended, but it's been a few. I also went, and part of what I did when I retired was got a certificate in architecture and landscape design. That just enhances my understanding of what goes on. Prior to that, I'm systems development. It's very relevant. It's the same type of a thing. You have a problem, you take all the components to the problem, and at the end, you make the determination what's the best product you can come up with. And the product is the most important.
Yes.
The developer will be here for a short period of time, but his project's going to be here for a long period of time. So you have to get the best you can.
I agree. Thank you so much.
Mr. Carter, hello and a very good evening, sir.
Thank you.
I thank you for applying. I thank you for caring. Mr. Anderson's qualifications may be second only to those of yours. I am fully aware of that, when it comes to Lake Forest, at least. I don't have any questions for you. I'm not asking any questions tonight. Only my admiration, my gratitude to you. And as I shared with Mr. Anderson moments ago, I am equally honored to know you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next applicant is Jolene Fuentes.
Hello, Mayor,
Good evening.
Councilman, Councilwoman. My name is Jolene Fuentes, and I seek your appointment to the City of Lake Forest Planning Commission. My late husband and I raised our 3 children in the woods development of Lake Forest 2, where I have lived for 24 years. Currently, I serve as Vice President of the Lake Forest 2 Master Homeowner Association. I also serve as President of the 4-4s Homeowners Association in Newport Beach. I have served on a variety of volunteer and charitable committees, including Saddleback Valley Schools, parent-teacher organizations, school site councils, and athletic booster organizations. Previously, I worked for a large property management firm in Mission Viejo. As our city grows, it is important to focus on how we want our community to look and function. I hope to bring fresh ideas to help our city maintain its aesthetics and functionality while observing the importance of fiscal responsibility. I know I passed the Dr. Gardner litmus test. I'm not a felon. My children are not felons. I'm just a good person. I would pass all of that, I promise. And I would be honored to be the first woman appointed to the Lake Forest Planning Commission. Do I sit down now and
No,
talk
we
to
each
myself?
have a question for you. Thank you.
Tried.
Couldn't be that easy. Thank you for applying. I'm going to ask the same question of everyone, so just so you're aware, and we'll all do that. The vast majority of housing units built within the city are 25 to 40 years old. What action should the city focus on to ensure the integrity of our residential neighborhoods?
Well, I believe that a majority of those homes, isn't it like 70%, are in an HOA? So I think fortunately in this city we have the support of HOAs that would help us maintain that. And then I guess just promoting and continuing with the economic development program to revitalize those neighborhoods would be our responsibility with that 30%.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, good to see you.
Hello.
And what do you see as the most important planning issue facing the city today, and what would you suggest we do to deal with it?
Well, I was here 2 weeks ago, and I guess you guys have made some big decisions. But if the developments that we're talking about were to come back to the council, I understand it really wouldn't come to the Planning Commission. But I do understand that you are interested in looking at the general plan, and I believe that would probably be one of the biggest issues facing us, to look that over and see how we can project for the next 35 years.
Okay, thank you.
First of all, thank you for applying.
Thank you.
And one of the Jim Gardner's requests for, are you a U.S. citizen or resident?
Well, that was already verified. I'm a voter, so
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's
You knew
not
that.
a sure thing anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. My question
And
is...
I'm a woman. We can vote.
And a board member where I go watch my fireworks for 4th of July.
Exactly.
As a member of the city's planning commission, how can you be a messenger of the city's goals and priorities?
Well, I believe that decisions that we make would be decisions that would fall within the city's goals and our mission. So by making sound, economic, educated decisions that reflect our city and how we want our city to look and to feel and how we want to live in our city, that as a planning commissioner, it would basically be my vote. I guess I could go out and be in a parade or something like that. But bottom line is, it's how I would vote, with the help of staff and with the help of the applicants, and find a good balance that promotes Lake Forest.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello.
I think this may be the first time we've had, about 4 women on here to apply?
There's only 2 of us tonight.
But only 2 came. But
well, I think one came and she got
up.
scared.
Well, we don't bite.
No.
And we've had our rabies shots.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Like everyone else, we try and ask the same thing to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I need to know, because I believe in the person should be able to hit the ground running, and we don't have time to train people. We are moving fast. So what I'd like to know is your familiarity with tentative maps, blueprints, logistics of mobility throughout all projects and feeding into the city, and also line of sight. And how many times have you been to a planning commission here?
Well, I have not been to a planning commission here. I'll start on the bad note. When I worked in property management, we often had developers that we worked with in new projects. We had changes to some of those developments, and so my familiarity is with my experience with the property manager. I own property myself. I manage my property. Could I build the sports park? No, but could I understand and understand the function of how to promote it through the city? Yes, I could do that.
Thank you. Hold on, one more.
Oh,
Adam.
Sorry, I was standing there and I heard you weren't asking questions.
Yes.
Sorry,
well,
my bad.
No, not at all. First of all, no, not at all. Firstly, good evening. Thank you for caring enough to apply. I have reviewed your application in its entirety. I thank you again. And yes, you were right. I don't have any questions.
Okay, sorry about
Thank
that.
you, madam.
No disrespect.
Not at all. Thank you, madam.
Good night.
Thank you.
Our next applicant is Thomas Grable.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm Tom Grable, and it's a pleasure to be here before you tonight for the possibility of a Planning Commission appointment. Just a couple of things. I hope you've all had a chance to read the application. I hope it was thorough, so I won't belabor a lot of the things in the interest of time. So just a couple of things I wanted to highlight. Just my vision and hope for a Planning Commission is kind of outlined in the application, 3 kind of tenets of experience, balance, and the degree of certainty. And by that I mean degree of certainty of a process. And it was mentioned, Councilman Herzberg earlier, about the process. First, experience, my qualifications and professional experience. I've got extensive background in environmental planning, in site design, entitlements, project management, and technical expertise in all things related to those kinds of things. I am in the development industry. Many, if not all of you, know that. I am a home builder. I've built thousands of homes throughout Southern California, many of which here in Orange County, nearby, but not in Lake Forest. But I've been a resident of Lake Forest for 14 years. But based upon my experience, I've worked with cities in over 30 jurisdictions in Southern California and have seen the gamut from highly mature cities to greenfield development, and each one has a number of complexities associated with it. So I would bring that experience in. I don't make any apologies about being in the home building industry. I think that is a benefit to this commission to have somebody with that kind of background looking at site design, looking at infill development opportunities, looking at different kinds of creativity that comes in with builders and developers. But also, too, I have a background in planning on the commercial industrial. It's been a few years, but the two really do go together, and certainly opportunities for mixed-use development are going to be coming in, here within the city at some point. As far as balance goes, I've got proven leadership on various boards, commissions, and associations. I know how to balance issues, real and perceived, technical data, in order to make good recommendations to a body such as yourself. So with that, it's my pleasure to be here before you tonight, and I look forward to your questions.
Great, thanks for applying. I'm going to ask the same questions of everyone. We all will. My question for you is, the vast majority of housing units built within the city are 25 to 40 years old. What actions should the city focus on to ensure the integrity of our residential neighborhoods?
That's probably one of the key issues that Lake Forest faces, being more on the mature city rather than some of our neighbors. First of all, in areas of the city that may have blighted conditions, code enforcement is key. Code enforcement for a blighted area, because that's a cancer that spreads. But at the same time, balancing that with opportunities for those developments that were built so long ago. Some of the work that's been done, for example, along Rockfield, to create more beauty in that area, that encourages pride of ownership. It encourages people to make improvements to their homes. Also, when people come in for renovations, when they come in for remodels, balancing, what the effects are for raising that community versus, what maybe the immediate next door neighbor may have a completely different agenda. So balancing those kinds of things. I think that's one of the biggest challenges with a mature city like this with that kind of housing stock.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. Good to see you. What do you believe is the most important planning issue facing the city, and how would you suggest it be addressed?
Well, I think probably the most important is going to be what we do to identify those remaining parcels that are now infill sites. And infill development, whether it be commercial or residential, industrial, how does that relate to, and you brought it up before, how does that integrate itself into the community around it? Edge conditions, grading setbacks, sensitivity to privacy, those kinds of things are going to be the biggest issue with infill. I think infill is the biggest issue in Lake Forest going forward.
Thank you for applying. As a member of the City Planning Commission, how can you be a messenger of the city's goals and priorities?
That's an interesting question in the sense that the balance is, am I a messenger of the city's policies and goals, or am I reviewing things on a project-by-project basis in light of those goals and policies to make recommendations? So it's a balancing act that I think that as a commissioner you have to do. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer to which way you go on that. I think first and foremost, there's the municipal code and the general plan. The general plan is a policy document. Those are guidelines. Those are subject to change, especially as the city goes through its various machinations in its life cycle. Then you have the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance is not made to be a document that's set in stone. It's a living, breathing document. So as a commissioner, to say that that's in place at the time I'm a commissioner, and I've got to react to everything, part and parcel to those documents, that handcuffs you as a person, and this body wants to make recommendations to you on the basis of technical merit and creativity that may be a little bit different than what is set up in those documents. So I think it's more of a balancing act of what the goals and the policies are and the ordinances with what makes for a
a really good project.
Thank you.
Good evening. This will probably be redundant to your application, but I still need to ask everybody the same thing. I'd like to know, are you familiar with tentative maps, the logistics of mobility of the project and pouring into the rest of the city, variants and blueprints and line of sight, and how many planning commission meetings have you been to here?
I'm familiar with each and every one of those things. I have probably put in applications many times for each and every one of those things. I actually have a final map that's on an agenda in another city right now tonight, so I'm anxious to find out how that went, although I think it's going to go through. But in terms of planning applications, that is my background. I've done that numerous times. As far as how many planning commissions, I couldn't even begin to count.
Here in our city?
In this city, I have been to, I believe, 2 planning. No. I've been to 3 to 4 planning commissions.
I don't know if I can say. One of the main reasons I asked that precise one is because that helps me to understand how familiar you are with what's going on here.
Understood.
Even though you have many skills from all over, that gives me that information.
I think, if I might, one thing that, and just to underscore what I said earlier, one of the things I bring to the table is having that multi-jurisdictional experience to bring in that outside influence of how other cities do things. And I know the council is exposed to many other cities and their policies and processes, but planning commissioners aren't necessarily that. That's the case. Those commissioners have to go out and seek it, and not all do. I've already been exposed to it.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for applying on your application. Thank you for caring enough to be here. I'm not asking any questions. I have reviewed your application. Just want to say quickly that I was very impressed with your reference to the general plan amendment and the fact that it's a living, breathing I'm paraphrasing, but you said something to the effect that they're all living, breathing instruments. Very fluid. Very, very nicely put. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next applicant is Seth Kaufman, and Mr. Kaufman did send his regrets. He had a predetermined work requirement for tonight and is unable to be with us, but he did hope that you would review his qualifications and keep him in consideration when you were marking your ballots. The following applicant, Karen Knox, withdrew her application earlier this evening. Our next applicant is Amanda Morell.
Good evening. Councilmember Robinson, we've gotten off on the wrong foot, and I'd like to say I'm sorry. You are a savvy businessman, a family man, and a faithful man, and those are all qualities that I respect. You've seen all of our applications and have given them equal consideration. I'm not going to belabor mine in details, but you have my application. I have a relevant professional experience, and I'm qualified for this position. I'm open-minded and will add a return on your investment if you give me a chance. I'm a person who I am on my own, and I do hope that you will wipe the slate clean and that we start fresh. Please vote Amanda Morell tonight, and if you don't think I meet your expectations, this is a 2-year term. You have my blessing to boot me at that point. Councilmember Nick, I've been very impressed by your proactive approach to making change for the good of our city. I like that you have an open door and are willing to speak up. I like that you risk standing alone among your colleagues to do what you think is just. I respect your willingness to meet with people to talk about their concerns. I would be honored if you would give me a chance to represent the people of Lake Forest on this commission. I will go the extra mile. Please vote Amanda Morell tonight. Councilmember Herzog, I know you sometimes think I'm a pain, and you have said yourself that I've never been your first choice candidate. I respect that, but now I ask you to make me your first choice. I know the city, I have a proven track record, and I have experience from the dais. I have relevant planning experience in both public and private sectors. I'm a community volunteer and parent, and I promise to do my best and keep an open mind. Vote Amanda Morrell. Mayor Pro Tem McCullough, you make me smile. Faith, family, fighting for what you believe in are all similar values we share. I'm qualified for this role and I will do a good job. I have the skills, desire, and love for this city. We also have some differences, yet we have a lot of things in common. I, like you, am a servant leader. I'm also a woman, and regardless of what others think, we do see things differently and make a contribution. I am who I am, and I'm not afraid to speak my mind, to listen, analyze, and do what I think is best. Please vote Amanda Morrell. Mayor Voights, faith, family, and fighting for what you believe in, I know are also important to you. You have a contagious spirit about you, and I like that. You share that with others. You have overcome many obstacles and continue to do so, yet because of your faith, a lot of hard work, and help from others, not only do you have a lovely wife and daughter, but a flourishing career as our mayor. I'd like to work with you and the other commissioners planning the future of Lake Forest. Please consider this a new beginning for us and vote Amanda Morrell.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much for applying. I'm asking the same question of all the applicants, and we'll all do the same. My question for you is, the vast majority of housing units built within the city are 25 to 40 years old. What action should the city focus on to ensure the integrity of our residential neighborhoods?
Well, I think you should continue to look for programs and ways to encourage residents to have pride of ownership. And I'm just going to keep my answers very brief tonight because I know you've been through a lot. So to me, it all comes down to the viability of our neighborhoods and the pride of that ownership, and looking for ways to keep things alive relative to, continued growth.
Great. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Good to see you. What do you see as the most important planning issue facing the city today, and how would you suggest we address it?
I see having a common vision and knowing, truly having, having our leadership sort of work towards some common goals and kind of getting out of the storming stages and into the performing stage. I think, to me, that's the biggest planning challenge going forward, is getting the city performing again.
Thank you for your service to the city, and thank you for your involvement with the boys and girls of our city. As a member of the city's Planning Commission, how can you be a messenger for the city's goals and priorities?
Acting in a professional manner and taking each situation on its own merit, talking to others and listening to what they have, and then acting on what it is the people of Lake Forest and the businesses of Lake Forest want and need.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm quite sure that you already know all of these. Your application and your service that you already do and job already says it, but I have to ask everybody the same thing. Number one, how familiar are you with tentative maps, logistics of mobility, variants, reading blueprints, and line of sight, and how many planning commissions have you attended here in the city?
Well, hopefully I'll be able to retain all of that, but in terms of attending planning commission meetings, I really can't. I've never kept tabs on how many I've attended, but I'll say frequently I do attend, and I do follow the issues. In terms, my background is as a landscape architect and land and facilities planner. So as a part of my profession, I routinely deal with all of the things that you've asked me. And as a Parks and Recreation Commissioner for the City of Lake Forest, I sat in a conference room and reviewed the 300-plus page construction document set for the sports park, page by page, and found things and asked Mr. McGill questions, and he's like, "That's in there?" I am adept at sort of a big picture concept as well as the details of using all of those tools, because I view those as tools for planning.
Thank you very much, and I already knew that you knew that.
Okay.
But everyone that applied does not have these skills, and for me, I'm always looking for someone that can hit the ground running, because we're developing the last portions of our land, and it's very vital. People don't have time to do catch-up, and we have some very qualified people, but I still have to ask that, because from the people that may not be at that level, I need to know that so I can have a secured vote. So thank you for being willing to tolerate while I try and throw out the same thing.
Ms. Morrow, good evening, and thank you for being here. Thank you for caring enough to apply. And again, thank you for being here tonight. No doubt that your presentation was unique and a new approach, no doubt. I thank you indeed for acknowledging me and for your complimentary comments. I promise you that I will continue to keep your trust. As to your application, I have reviewed it. I do not have any questions, and in fact, I'm not asking any questions tonight. But I promise you that I have reviewed your application, and the fact that you are qualified, there's no doubt in my mind.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you.
Our next applicant is Dino Roman.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor, council members, staff, thank you again for giving me this opportunity again. I was here a few months ago applying for the same position. My name is Dino Roman. I've lived in Lake Forest just over 23 years now. Prior to that, I've lived in New York City for 27 years and a small town out on Long Island, New York for 3 years. So certainly I have a broad background in terms of my living experiences. From my application, you can see that I've always been active in the community and in our schools, through which I've had a lot of positive interaction with city staff and leadership, which I've enjoyed very much. As a recent graduate of the Lake Forest Leadership Academy, I'm convinced that this is something that I really will really suit me well, and that I can do a lot of good for this city. I think my background and long commitment to living in and giving back to this community makes me an ideal candidate. Although I don't have a background in city planning, I am a recognized leader in my field. I'm very technically and detail-oriented. I'm a team player as well as a team leader. And most importantly, I'm a consensus maker, both in my role at work with other disciplines and regulatory agencies and as vice president of my homeowners association. Sure, there's a bit of a learning curve to climb. I'm the newbie guy that the guy back there talked about before. But my resume shows that I have the skills, background, and tenacity to climb that learning curve very rapidly. Lake Forest is going through a lot of new development and growth at the moment. These are generally good things, but if not done right, this can negatively impact our way of life, the way we in Lake Forest want to live it. We need to carefully consider how these changes will impact our community, from traffic to increased demands on our infrastructure. I'd love to be a part of this and help keep Lake Forest a great place to live and raise a family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for applying again. And I'm going to ask the same question of everyone, and we all will do that. So my question for you is, The vast majority of housing units built within the city are 25 to 40 years old. What action should the city focus on to ensure the integrity of our residential neighborhoods?
Well, I think, first of all, the city has to do its part in maintaining the infrastructure in those neighborhoods, keeping the roads looking nice, keeping, the public landscaping looking nice. I think Lake Forest does a great job with the slurry seals and the repavement programs we have here. Our streets are in really great condition. And then I think it's important to provide incentives to homeowners to keep up their properties. I mean, there's no other way we're going to be able to do that. I mean, from my experience with homeowners associations, I mean, you can regulate all you want, and that's just going to get people ticked off. But I think if there's incentives there, and I know the city does have a program, a beautification program, that hopefully, that would do the trick.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, good to see you. What do you see as the most important planning issue facing the city today, and how would you suggest we address it?
Well, prior to tonight, I probably would have said something else, but you guys scared me tonight with this residential-commercial mix. I think that hadn't occurred to me, and I think, Mr. Nick, you pointed out that, commercial is having a tough time, and we're going to have to rely on residential more and more, and I hadn't thought of that. And that's something that kind of concerns me, because I like the look and feel of the city the way it is, and frankly, I don't like this commercial residential mix that we were talking about earlier before. So I think that's something that requires a lot of thought, and we need to figure out what to do with these commercial properties.
Okay, thank you.
I want to first thank you for your involvement with our Eldorado Chargers.
Thank you.
As a member of the city's planning commission, how can you be a messenger of the city's goals and priorities?
Most of all, just involvement in the community. I mean, word of mouth goes a long way. I'm on my homeowners association, so I have access to newsletters and that sort of thing. Getting involved in city events, and being out there in the community. And, being I see these guys on the planning commission. I see you guys all over the place, and that goes a long way in promoting our views.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi.
I'm quite sure that you probably know 99% of this, but there may be one thing on here I can twist a little bit because I have to ask everybody the same thing. First of all, how familiar are you with the tentative map, blueprints, logistics of mobility in projects and bleeding into other traffic, variance, and line of sight? And also, how many planning commission meetings have you attended?
I've attended,
for this city?
For this city. I've attended not many planning commission meetings. I've attended a few. I've addressed the planning commission for my homeowners association when we were redoing our entrance monument sign, because we had to go through the sign ordinance stuff that's in place, and so I've addressed them on that. In terms of blueprints and technical drawings and that sort of stuff, I'm extremely well versed in that because of my my line of business. Line of sight, believe it or not, we actually use line of sight as well in the aircraft industry.
Very important.
And we've dealt a lot with that. We've got view homes in our homeowner association, so we've got issues with that as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Roman, good evening, sir. Thank you for caring enough to apply. Thank you for your application. I have reviewed it thoroughly. I do not have any questions. I'm not asking any questions tonight, but I promise that I have reviewed your application, and I just want to quickly thank you personally for acknowledging me.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you indeed.
Thank you.
Our next applicant, Kenneth Willard, is not in the audience this evening, so the final applicant tonight is Adam Williams.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Adam Williams, obviously, and this is my first time applying for a position as a planning commissioner. I do bring with me 7+ years of experience in property management with Saris Regis Group. And where I feel that ties in is that obviously I have a responsibility to my ownership to ensure that we're operating a budget that works for them and in planning capital items for improvements. And also at the same time I have to have a balance and ensure that my residents are happy as well. So that would obviously be my main focus if elected to this or selected for this position, was that there is a synergy between the prosperity of the city and the wishes of the residents as well.
Great. Thank you for applying. We're all going to ask we're going to ask different questions, but we've asked all the applicants the same question here. So my question for you is, the vast majority of housing units built within the city are 25 to 40 years old. What actions should the city focus on to ensure the integrity of our residential neighborhoods?
I definitely feel that some sort of incentive program would be beneficial, giving homeowners the incentive to make any kind of improvements that they can in terms of residential.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, good to see you.
Good to see you.
What do you believe is the most important planning issue facing the city, and how would you suggest we address it?
Well, again, I definitely think that, and I've heard some comments on it this evening, I think that one of the important things in planning for the city is to ensure that we're making plans that are going to work well into the future in terms of the happiness of the residents, and marry that with the ability for the city to grow in prosperity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for applying. As a member of the city's planning commission, how can you be a messenger of the city's goals and priorities?
Well, again, I definitely think that as a resident of Lake Forest, I think that I have a pretty good idea as to what the residents would be looking for in terms of planning for the city. And I think that I would definitely carry that with me as a messenger.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for applying.
Good evening.
I'd like to know your knowledge on tentative map reading, blueprint reading, logistics of mobility within the project, and also coming into the regular traffic, and variance and line of sight. And last but not least, how many Lake Forest City planning commissions have you attended?
Well, my knowledge is limited in all of those areas, and I have not actually attended a planning commission meeting.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your application. I have reviewed it. I do not have any questions. I am not asking any questions tonight from anyone, but I thank you for being here.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for applying.
That was our final applicant for the evening.
Once you do that, we count.
Okay, as we mentioned earlier, any candidate receiving at least one vote in this round would move on to the next round. We have 3 candidates that have received at least one vote. Those are David Carter, Jolene Fuentes, and Amanda Morrell. So for round 2, you would be selecting from David Carter, Jolene Fuentes, or Amanda Morrell. The council has selected Jolene Fuentes as the next planning commissioner.
There would be a 2-minute intermission. You know, all you that have applied, I want to thank you for being involved with our city, and I hope to see you guys in future council meetings or planning commission meetings. Stay involved with us. Thank you so much for your applications. reconvene the Lake Forest City Council meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I think before we move on to the next agenda item, I do think the city clerk should read the votes that came out on the last round, so I think the public needs to know it is a public record. So I'd appreciate that be done.
The votes for Jolene Fuentes were Councilmember Nick, Councilmember Robinson, and Mayor Voights, and Mayor Pro Tem McCullough and Councilmember Herzog voted for David Carter.
Thank you. Now that brings us to item number 12.
That was continued to October.
Oh, item number 13. Thank you for reminding me.
Agenda item 13, legislative and regulatory matters, submitted by City Manager.
Mr. Members of the City Council, just a quick update. In this agenda item, the staff give you an update on SB 594. And as I'm sure the council recalls, but for the purposes of the audience, it was a bill by Senator Hill that would fundamentally change the way that certain organizations that represent cities could be active in campaigns of a statewide nature affecting cities and local communities. The League of Cities is looking to drop their opposition to this because it's been totally re-amended to eliminate the concerns that the council had where this bill originally had been got and amended to prevent that activity. Apparently now it's changed entirely again. So the concerns that you had, that you voted to oppose that bill have been changed, and so we'll continue to update you, but we anticipate that you will obviously be able to remove your opposition once the bill shows up in print. I think that's what the League is wanting to see before they officially do that, so we'll let you know when that occurs.
Thank you. Request for appointments.
Agenda item 14, request for appointment, League of California Cities, Association of California Cities, Orange County, and/or the Orange County City Selection Committee, submitted by City Clerk. And we've received no new notifications.
Then on that, City Manager's report.
I have nothing further this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Herzog.
I'm really not sure what to say. We just saw the destruction of our Planning Commission. We had numerous applicants that were highly qualified to choose from. And we already have a situation where there are two individuals with no real planning experience on the commission, and we've seen the problems we've had, and they've been reported. And so instead of choosing any of the numerous applicants that did have experience and background, we chose somebody, and I indicate there was only 3 of those votes, with no experience. So we now have an entirely inexperienced planning commission. And I believe that there was no reason for the 3 changes that have just occurred between the last, what happened in January and then tonight, except for political reasons. We have 3 political appointees who have agendas and are going to be beholden to 3 council members. The community is of no importance. The community has lost. And at this juncture, it'll be very interesting to see. We do have petitions circulating. We will probably have more. And I do hope that people of Lake Forest rise up and demand to have their city back. The people of Lake Forest founded this city. They then started the July 4th parade. They went through and designed El Toro Road. They went through and killed an airport. Everybody on this dais has talked about the community being the most important thing. Yet the community was ignored tonight on several fronts. And with the Planning Commission now, I don't see any reason to have one. There's absolutely no reason to have one. And so to say I'm disappointed would be a gross understatement. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot said in the future. But I really have to digest this, because this is truly a tragedy for the city of Lake Forest, and I do hope that people rise up and take their city back in the near future.
Councilman Nick?
What Mr. Herzberg calls tragedy, I call democracy. People on November 6th, I think it was. Yeah, November 6th, the anniversary of my fleeing my birth country. November 6th, yeah, it was November 6th. Oh, is it your birthday? All right. They spoke. They put a new council in place. 2 years earlier, they had spoken by allowing Mayor Voice to be the pioneer of change. That change continued on, and I promise you that change will continue on November of next year. I promise you that the change will happen. That's democracy, it's not a tragedy. And if institutional knowledge, and institutional knowledge is important, but if that was the case solely, then we wouldn't have term limits for U.S. presidents, because as far as I'm concerned, Ronald Reagan could have been the president for as long as he had a sound mind, and he did have it till late 1990s. We would have been much better off in the early 1990s by Ronald Reagan than George Herbert Bush. Change is a good thing. I embrace it. I believe it's a good thing. And again, I don't call it tragedy. This is just democracy. Mr. Herzberg just doesn't like it because the change is against his wishes. And he's little by little, actually at this point he's lost most control, but little by little, 2.5 years ago, the changes started happening. It continues. It will continue. I promise you that. And it is not tragedy. This is democracy in action. Thank you, and thank you for my utmost thanks to those who were here tonight, to those who are still there in the audience, to the staff, and to my colleagues. Thank you, and good night.
Councilman Robinson?
I was hoping to bring this up a little bit earlier, but our last meeting got really long, so I didn't want to bring it up at that time. I would really like Southern California Edison sometime in the next few months to come in and talk to us a little bit about quality of electrical poles here in town. We did have that accident with the pole falling over, and there's been a lot of debate about why that happened, and so I'd like them to come in and talk a little bit about that. I understand there was also a newspaper article in the paper, which I missed when I was out of town, and I found out later, so it seems like it's an issue that's not just Lake Forest focused, but countywide, and so I'd appreciate it if they could come in and talk to us about that, and then also probably give us an update on just kind of what's going on with songs. I've heard a lot of rumors, seen some articles in the paper, and so I'd just like to hear from them. And again, anytime in the next few months, I'm not trying to push them to be in here the next meeting, but if we could get them on the agenda, I'd appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor.
I know you have a list of things you've been at and done.
Not too many. August is a dead month. Hobby Lobby? is a new place that is open in Foothill. If you haven't been there, go. It's where the old Mervin's store was. They took the whole unit. Very good, very unique things there. Orange County Transit Authority Special Needs. First of all, they have their new book out. They only do it about every 2 years. And they're doing a lot of new things. You need to make sure you go on their website and look. Some of these things will be good for South County. As you know, they cut our lines first because we have low ridership. We have low ridership because you don't give us enough buses down here to get our kids around. So some of the children are able to stay in college and go to school because there's no buses, because if they work nights, they can't get back home and all like this. So we're working on some things of that nature. I attended a meeting at Westminster, City of Westminster, for former Mayor Margie Wright. I don't even know how long Margie was the mayor, but she was ill and she had to step down from some of her positions, but she's still on council. And being the chair of the Orange County Housing Authority, she had been there for 13 years. So the chair and Karen Roper, we had to go over, and John Humbuck, we went over and gave her a plaque and flowers and thanked her and everything. Also, I need to make an apology to the people because we had a very long meeting and I got confused. On the ABC license, let me tell Nick so he can hear this. You are correct, Nick. Okay, he needs that. When I was talking about the ABC license, we could say yes, and they still can no, and they can still do it. That's it's not the 2021. They'll carry off premises. It's the one in eating in restaurants. So did I correct that enough?
Thank you.
And he was right. He needs you to know that. Okay. Also, the Healthy City. When I gave this to you to get copies, did you get enough copies to give to everyone? I'm asking for us to take in the Healthy City initiative. We now have what is called Orange County. I met with Michelle Martinez and Carla DeCandia, and they are kind of heading up. And what they're doing is, as I reported last time, Southern California Associate of Government I've put within their sustainable living the garden, where they will help fund gardens, and also here in Orange County, these two people, along with some others, are heading up a project throughout our county trying to get people to help put in gardens, and even in some of the developments you have, especially if you have some affordable housing or seniors, to see if they can have, like they have little tot lots, see if they can have little areas for gardens. So there's also a city ordinance that is being asked for, so we may want to look at it. I'd like for all of you to look at it, and then any other person that would like to put it on our agenda, just so you can look at all the packet, and we may want to give some directions on that. Can I get a second on that? It takes two of me. Yeah. Thank you. So the staff already have that. Like I said, please keep the firefighters in memory that they're still fighting. Some did get injured, and the people that has lost their homes. Whenever I see these tragedies, I think about where would we put that many people if they were displaced, and the Red Cross doesn't put them up indefinitely. But also, when we get these CDs, the DVDs, they don't always be compatible with our computers and stuff. So maybe we have to start coming looking at them at City Hall, whichever computer we can get them to run on there, because even a DVD player they wouldn't run on, and try them all. I do need to make a statement. I got a minute left, and I can do it in a minute. I'm very grateful that our city overfloweth with a lot of talent. And tonight here, I purposely asked certain things. Do you know how to read a tentative map? Do you know how to read blueprint, variance, line of sight, and the logistics of making sure a project has mobility and that traffic is built in? And I'm very, very disturbed that our city did not pick the cream of the crop. It was only 2 or 3 people that did not have those abilities. and we picked one of those that didn't have those abilities. And I believe that that's going to hurt us on the long run. Maybe not up front, but on the long run. I hear her comments, political. I don't know if it's political or not, but it's short-sighted to not get the best. When we formed this city, we start off with the best. And we've always, our staff, you look around at our staff, people are always trying to buy them. We throw a little something more to them to keep them, because they're the best, see. And when we don't get the best for our city, we're shortchanging the citizens. I do not believe that a person, with all the development we got going on with the last little bit, that we should pick someone that cannot hit the ground running. This city attorney over here, he caught heck from 2 people on the council, the only 2 that didn't vote for his firm. And he had a rough year or 2. He had to prove himself. And I literally stated to him, he's right there, and he can say if I'm not right, and Bob was there, if you hiccup one bit, I will be all over you, because I didn't vote for you. I don't want you here. I don't believe you can move fast enough to keep up with us. I don't believe you can hit the ground running, and I don't want you. And I only have my one vote, but I will rise up my citizens to get you out of here. And he proved himself. He did hit the ground running. It took him, it was about a year before he asked me, have I made it yet? I said, you're doing pretty good. Just don't stumble, you know. So we have always chosen the prime people. In this area, we don't have time to train. We have at least one person, I don't know about the other one, that I have gotten numerous of complaints on, that they're not quite up to par. They still got a big learning curve. We don't need a learning curve on anything in this city, because we're a moving city. We may be small, but we do things. Our officers, every one of our officers, our chief, and I already had a talk with Sandra, don't be picking this one away. They have been taken away because, like Sandra says, and the chiefs before her, you get the best. See, our staff, we get the best. And this is the first time since I have even been at my very first city council meeting, which I was a part of this city and stuff too, that I do not feel confident in what we have on our planning commission. And I need to say that as a part of record, so no one can say I've put a stamp of approval on it. I already have some I'm getting complaints about, and if you listen to the comments of what I asked, it was not one of the ones that has the ability. I don't care if you know them or not, you can recognize talent. You can recognize wisdom and knowledge. I wouldn't want an officer that couldn't shoot a gun at least half as good as I can, because I may need him to help me. Oh, yes, I shoot good. Out the 100 rounds for qualifying, I missed 4. Okay? So if he can't shoot that good or close to it, I don't want him carrying no gun, because he may miss and shoot me. If my fireman don't know how to put out a fire, I don't want him at my house trying to save my house. Go somewhere else. You shouldn't be there. And every one of these people sitting here, they know their stuff, and if they don't, they shouldn't be here. And they won't stay. We've had some come and they didn't stay long. But I am really, really concerned with what we have to develop to not have the best. And practically every one of these people, but 3 that didn't have the talent. And we picked one of those 3. That's sad. Thank you. Go home and shed some tears, because I will be.
I, too, was at the Hobby Lobby grand opening. It was a great turnout, and it's a great store in our Foothill Ranch. And with that, thank you.